Has the show actually started yet?
No, of course not. It's only 10:30. Time.
Yeah, we're using Italian windage on the start time.
We would have started already if you didn't talk. Just about finished right at the time. You know,
Slam.
And you had that one just queued up, didn't you? All right. Welcome to episode 237. I almost said 227. The 237 of the Linux Lugcast. We're an open podcast / lug that meets at 9 p.m. Eastern every first and third Friday of the month using Mumble. We encourage anyone listening to join us and participate on the podcast. Check out linuxlugcast.com for the server details. If you have any questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to discuss and are unable to join us live during the show, you can send us an email at feedback@linuxlugcast.com. We have a Lemmy community where we post things that sometimes get talked about on the show, depending on the show. We have a Matrix room where we sit around and BS about just about anything. There's a YouTube version of this where you get to see our pretty faces. And there's a Peertube for those who hate Google. I'm your host for this evening, Honky Magoo. With us tonight is Eric.
Good evening.
Joe.
Yep, I'm here.
Lugbot.
My girlfriend's dog died, so I bought her an identical one. She was not appreciative at all. She just screamed at me. What am I supposed to do with 2 dead dogs?
I'm here too. Minnix.
Emergency. Hello.
Netminer.
Yes, I'm here. Why, I don't know.
The answer is have a barbecue.
And Scotty.
Hello, hello.
Good old Lugbot.
Oh, Joe thought it was funny.
All right. So, Netminer.
He has an MX problem.
Actually, MX, as flaky as it is appears to be the solution for Pi 4s. I will warn people against putting a desktop on dietpi. Not because there are some serious holes in their installation setup, and you will be digging around for packages to fill in the holes. For instance, things like Synaptic doesn't get a full set of packages, and unless you like reading the error message and then looking up what package you need to load to fill that hole, it's a very very tedious process and a very frustrating process. Basics like Synaptic and the .deb installer don't seem to work reliably, and a lot of the launchers are questionable. dietpi probably works great as a server system at the apt level, at the aptitude level, but if you actually try to make it into a desktop, there their packaging is pretty ragged. Also, it tended to be pretty slow when I was running it off of an SD card. Since I don't,
oh, sorry.
since I don't generally run my operating systems on Pis off the SD card, I don't know if MX on the same card would be as slow, but this was pretty slow. I can recommend dietpi is really a console/server operating system. Pushing it beyond that would take a lot of work, or some hacking into the ARM Debian stuff, so that you didn't use dietpi's setup. You used the packages drawn off of Debian's core system. Also, I haven't tried using task select to see if that would make a better installation, but I just found it quite frustrating. If task select brings in more packages, I wouldn't know, but just trying to do it from their basic configurator is a nasty thing.
With the dietpi, I had never used it myself personally, but this is like years ago, I saw some just videos of other people using it, testing it out or whatever, and it looked like it was supposed to be pretty stripped down, like minimalistic or whatever. And if I remember correctly, do they store their binaries in like some sort of odd directory? Like they don't use USR bin, or am I thinking of I might be thinking of another distro.
It's just Debian, but it's like modified mainly for ARM64 devices and ARMHF. It's not a lot to it. They were originally made to be an alternative to Raspberry Pi OS, which at the time was Raspbian, for the Raspberry Pi. So
its focus is largely server IoT type applications. The fact that you can install desktop software on it is a feature, but since I didn't do task cell, I used their basic dietpi config. I didn't get a standard Debian XFC desktop, or I didn't get it all of the pieces. I may put the card back in and try to see what a task using the standard task cell Debian interface to see if that brings in more or fills in some of the holes. But trying to use it from the dietpi tools was a frustrating experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Like the package manager just isn't pulling in all the dependencies. Sounds terrible. That matter of fact, that sounds like the old days of Linux.
As I said, if you're comfortable working, doing your installations and stuff from the terminal, it may be bearable, but trying to actually use it as a desktop operating system, it didn't seem to be cutting the mustard. Again, since I just remembered that you can install TestCell, which is the basic Debian server role configurator. This is a console-based configurator. If I recall correctly, where everything's that may bring in more reasonable packages or a more complete package. The pyconfig or dietpi config just leaves some sharp edges around that you generally run into when you try to actually do anything.
All right, so it sounds like you're not doing what the distro maintainers intended for it to be done with, right? Like you're going above and beyond. So I imagine you're going to hit a few rough spots there. But I got some terrible advice for you, and I offered this advice to Sebastian during the New Year's Eve show. I told him, go ahead and just download the entire repository from that Debian has, right? Download everything and just start unpacking everything until you get a working desktop.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. If I go to the standard way of getting a desktop, this used to work under Ubuntu as well, is you'd start out with a server core and then you'd use the TestCell role selector to pick out which desktop and which software packages to install, and that would pull in your desktop and related goodies. But lately Ubuntu, at least on the Pi, has poisoned trying to do a desktop on its on the server.
Have you checked out Martin Wimpers's desktopification? He did a stream. This was, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, 2 years ago, something like that, where he on stream demonstrated taking this was for the Pi, as a matter of fact. I think it was one of the Pi generations, the Pi 4 8 gig or something like that, had just released, and he was showing everybody how do you take Ubuntu server and build it into a working desktop. And he did this with I think Ubuntu Mate, and then they just spent like the next 6 months refining it, making the process much smoother and getting all the other elements necessary for a working desktop. It's called desktopification.
Well, the deal is that there are two official, as far as I know, there are two official Ubuntu flavors for a desktop. One is Ubuntu, which gives you a GNOME desktop, which is pretty heavy for the Pi. And the other one is Mate. Now, those are official flavors. What is no longer supported, as far as I can tell, by the official stuff is the taking the server image and manually installing, let's say, LXQT, LXDE, XFCE on top of it. The repos have been poisoned.
Yeah, it wouldn't work properly for some, like I think the networking stack would not work properly. So you'd need some additional work to get things like Wi-Fi and all of that to function properly if you were going to be doing desktop work with it. But you left out one other option, TTY. You got to use the command line.
Well, yes, but what I'm talking about is the apt, the Debian repos have been poisoned to block the usual ways of putting a desktop on, even if you used apt-get or apt-install the packages. You cannot use the command line to install desktops not supported by Ubuntu on the Pi.
So what'd you end up doing? Did you go back to MX?
Yeah, I'm running MX right now. I still have dietpi on a 64 gig SD card, and I might try that load task cell onto it and try installing the desktop from that. But just trying to use the dietpi tools. By the way, the dietpi website lists a number of desktops which they allegedly support. But in actual operation, I haven't found the installation that they do with their own tools complete or even fundamentally functional.
You got to get that Ubuntu core going, man. Big snap.
Excuse me. I just ate. And I really want to keep it down.
You got your wonderful, nice, delicious kernel as a snap. You got your desktop as a snap. Everything is just a snap. So, I mean,
yeah. By the way, one of the snaps that they're running into problems with is Steam as a snap. The Steam people are steamed about it.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to mention that one. You were supposed to let me have a win.
Are you really a fan of snaps, Scotty? Or are you just being sarcastic?
I'm the underdog. I normally, if people hate on it, I'm probably going to support it.
Really? You like snaps?
Yeah,
You're the only
snaps are
person I've
bad.
talked to outside of the internet that likes snaps. Well, Joe likes them.
My 8-year-old Think Penguin laptop is non-functional because of Snap.
Actually,
Snaps killed his family.
Actually, there is good news. Your Mozilla is offering a deb of Firefox up front for those of you who want to ditch the Snap Firefox.
Yeah, which is weird because they supported, they originally supported Canonical coming out with the, they like endorsed the whole Snap thing, and then all of a sudden they're like, why don't we just muddy the water with this here deb? And by the way, this, I don't think the deb is the deb in the repos, or are they offering a PPA for the deb? Because it sounded like PPA to me, but I mean,
I only checked on it on OMG Ubuntu, and they were, and all I read was the headline, because I'm working with bookworm systems down the line. The one thing, Morton C., are you here?
Present.
Yeah, I did you say something that you had a small AMD system that might
Yes.
be surplus?
Yes.
Well, I think I want to retire one of the Pis to server duty, but I need something to still run a couple screens. And I think the AMD box will do everything the Pi will do, maybe a little better.
Why is your face like that, Joe?
I was thinking I have a gigabit bricks that hasn't been turned on in a while. Debating whether or not to mention it.
Is that like a little nook or something?
Yeah, it's a Nook-alike. But like an old school
I like
one.
that. Nook-alike.
Well,
Is it an atom chip?
I think it's a Intel Celeron J4105.
Okay.
Somebody has one for sale on Facebook that it looks just like it. So that's why I was thinking about it.
I almost bought one of those years ago.
When my server was inside the house, I was using one of them out here as like a thin client. It works fine as that.
You want to get that power supply this weekend?
I don't know. I have a lot of writing to do for that other podcast that I'm on that, you get pissy whenever I mention.
So stupid.
So, and I have that podcast this weekend, so I don't know if I'm going to have time.
Writing to do.
Lots and lots of writing to do. Now, somebody had asked me about this the other day. I thought it was on this show. This is the 8-bit DOE controller with the 3D printed holder for my phone. And I had just like redesigned this portion here and this portion here. So that way I could, use one of the standard pre-made phone holders. Came with like a tripod.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm just looking. I'm just wondering, I'd like to, well, my options are buying another Pi board because I have a case here waiting for it, and I have a power supply, or seeing if I can pick up either the AMD box or something like it for that'll drive a couple of screens. and then retire one of my 8 gig Pis to a server position, run it headless with dietpi or something.
You know, this is, since we're talking about pies, I kind of wanted to bring this up real quick. It kind of fits in with the whole pie subject here about Pi finally going public. And I wanted to get y'all's opinion on it. If you think this is a good thing or a bad thing, like the way it is now, when we talk about pies, like this is our kind of hobbyist angle. Like you hear netminer talk about everything he's done with pies, almost using them as little home labs. And he's got the Pi 400, and he's got this Pi that he can put MX Linux on, and he wanted to learn Docker and all that other stuff. So they are cheap enough, and they are usually, they're small enough, low power, that you can afford to experiment with them and use them just like Cal Netminer's using his. But do you think when Pi goes public, we've complained in the past about the price rising and it turning from a company that was meant to support hobbyists and computer science learning and things like that to a industry? And I'm wondering if you think this is going to make things
bad news.
Worse. Yeah. Isn't the purpose of going public to create shareholders, and don't companies usually defer to their shareholders, and don't shareholders usually hold stock?
They have a legal obligation.
And the shareholders that hold stock want to make money on their investment,
Right.
and so that's why they have shares to begin with.
I will say that going public is probably a bad idea, but I also want you to think about a lot of the other conversations we've had around Raspberry Pi and the discussions where we've talked about how, Orange Pi makes better boards. We wish these boards were faster. We wish that there were separated lanes for the USB. And we wish that there was another way to put like either a SATA drive on there or an M.2 drive on there. And as those things happened, it got more and more expensive. As those features were added, you ended up with a higher cost board. So yeah, it's definitely what people asked for, but I don't think that they knew the extent of what they were asking for when it came to the enthusiast market. Now, I will say that when they first came out, they did market themselves to low income, education purposes, and then the hobbyists kind of took over. But
if I recall correctly, they said that they were always going to keep it at the $35 price range, and they were going to make sure revisions fit in that.
Yeah, they did mention that a couple of times, but honestly, the way that, inflation happened, it just wasn't feasible to keep that unless they wanted to do that with their zero line. And then their zero line, it's what? It started out as a $5 machine, then it went to a $15 machine. I don't know where it's sitting at now.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. If you want to experience what it was like, when Raspberry Pi first came out, and the very low cost but kind of low power machine, the 02W, that's kind of the way to go.
Yeah, there's still a lot you can do with the Zero. I mean, you can still run a desktop on it. It's not going to be, super fast, but that's the way the original Pi was. So.
But Joe has a point too, that everybody was asking for more features, faster processor, more memory.
Why isn't this more like orange pie? Why isn't this
Yeah,
more like
but
banana
other
pie?
companies were hitting the same price point at almost double the features.
Well,
I agree
Double
with
the
Morris.
spec.
some of them, when it first started happening, yes, I agree. They had more memory, they had faster processors, and they were roughly the same price point. But as time went on and they started adding features, they started getting more expensive as well. And now you still have some that make those $35 boards that are usable, but they definitely don't have the same kind of backing that Pi does.
And
Yeah, Raspberry Pi, like it or not, for the geek market, the Raspberry Pi is the Chevrolet. You know, standard. You can do almost anything with it, and it's well supported, and there's a huge community. The others may be very good, but there's still the question is, will next year's Debian support your Purple Pi board?
Right. Your off-brand Pi, are they going to have as many operating systems that run on them? That's gotten better over time, but it's still a concern.
I say generic ARM images would have fixed a lot of that.
Now,
okay. Go ahead.
no, you are right on that as well. But before we segue into that, I want to segue into something else. And that's what's been interesting me lately with Raspberry Pi OS is the different things that you can run it on, which will segue nicely into the generic ARM. But like one of the shows, I brought a video where someone was talking about like $10 Chromebooks, used Chromebooks that you could get and run Raspbian OS on it. And then I did put a link already into the show notes for a tutorial on how to install Raspbian on a Raspberry Pi OS, whatever it's called now, onto a Windows RT tablet. And the only thing that's missing is hardware acceleration for graphics. So it won't play YouTube, it won't do videos very well, but it will do any of the server stuff that you want out of a Raspberry Pi. And the hardware is roughly equivalent.
So I watched that video today, where they installed the Raspberry Pi OS on the Windows RT, and they even got Wi-Fi to work, but like you said, hardware video acceleration is not working, which is okay. I mean, I wouldn't be watching YouTube on it. I would be using it mainly just to interface with my server at home, you know, and to work on Proxmox and stuff like that. But the Raspberry Pi going public, on that note, what do you see to be the future of Raspberry Pi? How big of an effect is that going to be? Do you think they're going to keep the Pi Zeros separate for hobbyists, and then enthusiasts and other people are going to gravitate toward the new Raspberry Pi 6 or 7 or 8?
It's going to end up being just like Panda Board, probably.
I think it's gonna lose a lot of the following that they've got now, because I think they're gonna lose the enthusiast market. They're gonna go mostly industrial, because that's where they've been kind of segueing throughout the pandemic, catering to industrial uses. I think where they're going wrong with public, there's no real reason to do it other than the money. If you remember the interview that whoever was the guy, he's the founder or whatever of Raspberry Pi, he mentioned that we could have made so much more money had we adjust the prices for demand. So when everybody was scalping because the demand was going way up, they could have raised the prices on Pi and made much more money. But because they're I don't want to say nonprofit, but I know that they classify them as educational boards and stuff like that. So they got like this huge discount on those CPUs. And wasn't it ARM who said that now because they made so much money during the pandemic that they were going to redo the licensing for those CPUs. So I'm thinking with them going public, they're going into the for-profit market and they're just going to target industry. So they're going to drop the whole educational side of things and just, look, if you want to base your new machinery, whatever you're running in your small business, use a Pi.
You bring up a good point, because during all the times that there have been shortages of Pis, industries got the Pis first before stores got them on their shelves. And so on that end, I don't think it's going to make a big difference, because I think going public, they're still going to do that same tactic of supplying their big customers with devices before we, the hobbyists, the random consumer, sees them on the shelves, especially during chip shortages, like during the pandemic and stuff like that. But I don't know, I think I'm more on the side of mordancy here when it comes to kind of a negative reaction to this, and shareholders being the ones to satisfy as far as getting as much money, squeezing as much money as they can out of the company. And I think usually in the end, that's bad for price-conscious customers, but maybe good for those that are looking for new features and higher-end performance.
Well, like Mortency was saying, it's actually a legal obligation for them to make as much money as possible for their shareholders. So they're going to be required to do those things.
But it's not a legal obligation for them to go public.
You're right.
No,
You're right.
that's just done because of the money, though.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they're going public.
I don't think they serve the maker community anymore. At least not first. I think, like Scotty said, the boards get sent to industrial manufacturers first.
Yeah, think about it. They saw that market. You got to compare the educational market to the industrial market. They saw the size of that market and how they can expand, and it was just dollar signs.
And plus, they have their own silicone now. When they make the RP1 and the RP2040, and what's the one on the Raspberry Pi 02, the RP3 maybe, or something like that. Anyway, go ahead, Honky.
I was just going to say, I think they've kind of abandoned the hobbyist market anyways, or they've seemed to go away from it, or they've how many people that are excited for the Raspberry Pi 5?
Not many.
Well, at my workshop, yes.
Yeah, well, okay, we have one that any of us know of.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to when the Raspberry Pi 4 came out. How many people do we know were excited about the Raspberry Pi 4?
Everybody.
I was.
How many people had a Raspberry Pi 4? I know Danny sold all of his stuff.
Yeah, I had like 3 of them.
Okay, so in one iteration, it just completely dropped off.
That's true. I didn't think
Why?
about that.
The price, the fact that they added a bunch of features so
people wanted.
No, I disagree with that. They didn't add a bunch of features people wanted.
You wanted
NVMe,
PCIe.
People wanted the separated lanes for the faster speeds on the Ethernet. They've come out.
That is true. Because most people use them as servers, and if you're hindering your Ethernet on something that you're using as a server, then that's not good. That goes against what they're trying to use it for. So that would be great.
Think about how they added it. They added it through daughter boards and things of that nature for you to gain access to that. Versus if you remember with the what's it called, a compute module. I remember how they had that separate board for the compute module that also had So they already had technology that they could have worked with and kept a decent form factor, something that could be planned around, you could build cases for. Now they changed the form factor around. You need additional daughter boards. There's no telling what the cases are going to have to look like to manage the boards plus the drives and then the cooling solutions. You get what I mean? You've stacked a ton of problems on top of this design, and it's done for industry because the industry in the industrial market, they won't have to look at the board. They can tuck it into a big box, and as long as it works, it's fine. But the enthusiast won't be able to do that.
And
Okay.
what's the lowest price right now on the Pi 5?
Like $80 or something.
$80, right?
Yeah.
So that's a tough call for me. I can get some pretty good used computers for $80.
Do you remember
Right.
what the Pi 4? Was it? Did they have a 1 gigabyte or was it a 2 gigabyte that was the lowest
I
price?
think they
Two,
had
I
a
think.
2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
two.
do you remember how much that was?
35.
35.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
It was their 35 machine.
Was it? Morgan's saying no.
It started out as 35, and then they stopped selling that one, and they were only selling the 4s and 8s.
I don't believe you.
We have this thing called the internet. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Matter of fact,
Not
no,
everything on the internet is true,
I
Joe.
think they also had the 1 gig for a little while, but they stopped doing the 1 gig for the 2 gig as the new base model, but they kept it at $35. And then I think during the pandemic, they had to raise the price by $5.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B 1 gigabyte, $35.
So
Right now?
RaspberryPi.com from $35.
Right now.
Well, that doesn't mean that there's any available, but that's
Yeah,
the
good
pricing
luck.
that they have there. CanaKit has the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B 1 gigabyte listed as $35, but $10 shipping.
But Honky makes a good point. In one generation, they went from the star in the eye of all hobbyists to
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to get it or not.
Right. And even before then, a lot of people have found other boards, especially that around that same price range, that are doing more than the Raspberry Pi is doing. And I know a lot of people say that it's not as supported. The operating systems aren't there as much. That's why you stick with things like, and you should always support things like Armbian and Arch Linux ARM that have a wide range of devices that they support. Because those are great operating systems that support so many boards.
Okay, I just looked it up, and the Pi 4 came out on 24 June 2014 with an introductory price of $35 for the 1 gigabyte, $45 for the 2 gigabyte, $55 for the 4 gigabyte, and $75 for the 8 gigabyte.
Wait, what was the year?
2019.
19.
so
Okay, I thought you said 14.
Yeah,
Yeah, he did.
I'm like, 14.
Did I? My bad.
Yeah, I
24
was gonna
June
say
So
2019.
that would make the 8 gig is that still available at $80 or whatever?
Adafruit has it listed as $75 for the 8 gigabyte model. Does that mean that they have it? Not necessarily. And Adafruit, that's like $30 for shipping. Adafruit's shipping is out of control. Now I do see one on Amazon. Hold on. Pi 4 computer 8 gigabyte for $77.
check the shipping on it though. It's probably going to be
No
like
shipping.
$80 shipping.
It's
Is it Prime?
It's Prime. Prime 1 day.
Get it tomorrow.
No shipping. Free delivery tomorrow, February 3rd.
Wow.
So who's
Yeah.
poised to take the place of Raspberry Pi? I think Pine is probably next in line, would you say? As far as
No,
I don't
no.
think as much.
Orange Pie.
There you go.
No.
I
You
would
think
go-
Orange
I
Pi
would-
above Pine, really?
Yeah.
Has Orange Pi got their heat issues under control? 'Cause
Yeah,
remember the
I'm not
original
sure.
ones? The original ones would get super hot to the point where you didn't want to touch it if it was running.
I had one burn out on me. It got so hot.
Hard kernel has been.
I haven't
Go ahead.
replaced mine yet, but I have a Odroid C2,
Oh, Odroid, I
And
forgot about.
and it worked way better than my Pi 3.
Now, I
That's
will
that's
say,
x86, right?
What?
I thought the Odroid was x86, or am I thinking of another board?
They do have an x86 one, but
They
most
do
of their
have
boards are ARM.
x86, yeah.
Yeah, that's hard kernel, isn't it? Who makes those?
Yes.
Yeah,
I will
Yeah,
say that Orange Pi has gotten a lot more interesting since they started using USB-C instead of barrel connector.
the USB or the Odroid C2, the C's were a drop-in replacement for the Pis, and
Okay.
yeah,
GPIO
I was really impressed.
So would you say Odroid is
They
above
they
Pine?
were. I don't know if they are still. You know, I got a Pine, and I had issues with it. I think I said I was going to send it to Joe.
Just everybody sends their garbage to Joe.
I think Joe said that I can get it to work, and I said you can have it. I actually have a case for. I bought it to build a NAS with 2 hard drives.
Oh.
Here's
That
the thing
sounds
with
fun.
Pine. They always come out with some very enticing hardware, but there's just the worst experience when it comes to software.
Well, they also are. They claim that they don't really make money on their devices, and that when they put out a new device, a new board, whatever, that you should consider that as reference hardware, at least in the beginning, because Pine themselves don't really do software development. They rely on the community to do software development. And sometimes their devices just don't really pan out, like the Pine Watch or Pine Time, I think it's called.
The Pine Note that
yeah,
everybody's waiting for, that e-ink notebook.
yeah, and the Pine Tab, I think, was kind of crummy, and the Pine Tab 2 was its replacement. So I think they kind of, which I think there still needs to be companies that do this, that take shots in the dark, that still have very innovative ideas, and they're not that worried about if things don't pan out they want it to be. They want to be on the very edge of computing. And also remember that Pine was, I think, one of the, if not the first company to put out the RISC-V single board computer.
Yeah.
With the Star. And so, I would say they're in a different category than companies like Orange Pi or Odroid.
If my Pine Cell dies tomorrow, I will consider it a good investment, and I will go and buy another one.
Yeah. Now the Pine Cell is awesome.
And I think the idea with Pine, though, is that by selling the cheaper hardware, they're not trying to, be innovative when it comes to the hardware itself. But if by putting that out there, people are then still able to develop the software. So hopefully somebody else can pick up and make better hardware. Then when they make that better hardware, the software will already be there because they've been out there for a long time.
To your point, also, they said that the Pine phone they put out the Pine phone not so that people would have an everyday Linux phone, but so people would actually start to develop mobile Linux. And so in the future, we would have an actual, everyday Linux phone, because the other companies like Librem and stuff like that, most of that, they were mainly in-house software developers that put out $1,000 Linux phones that halfway worked, and so they were kind of relying on a totally different model. Whereas, like you said, Pine wants people to develop software for these Linux software for these devices, and so they make them available at a low price so that all tinkerers and hobbyists can like. There is nowhere that you could find a Linux phone for what the Pine phone went for when what was it, $199, I think, or $149? The original Pine phone.
The original one was $149.
Yeah, and how much was Librem selling them for? Like $700 or $800?
Yeah, some
1,000?
Crazy price.
Yeah,
base of 1,000, and if you wanted the US version, it was 2,000.
The US made one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they knew that okay, you're not going to get. I mean, the developers knew, not the Pine developers, but the community knew that, all right, we're not going to get the best hardware. We're going to get a 720p screen. We're going to get a slower processor, but we can afford to buy one, if not several, and to at least have something to develop mobile Linux with. And I think that was their strategy. So I think it's still their strategy too.
And I think
I agree with that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The other thing I was going to say is I think somebody at some point needs to realize that some sort of somebody who wants to put out beefier hardware and realize the fact that people are putting a great deal of effort towards this software and try to find some middle ground between what Pine is doing, which is trying to get more people to develop, and then what Librem is doing, which is costing way too goddamn much that no one wants to spend that much money on something that's just in development still. So somebody's got to pick up the slack in that middle ground and try to get something that's better hardware to run these things, and maybe help a couple of developers pick one of the operating systems and try and push it, or like one or two, and try to push them forward a little bit more. Because the great thing about the Pine phone is, people like playing around with the Pine phone, but that's all it is. It's just a little playground to play around in. It's not an everyday use. If you grab somebody who can get a piece of hardware that's really good, that can utilize what these people have been trying to do with the software, and then just try to get it to function a little bit more as an actual phone, and then you can start pushing it in that direction, because it's a slow push. It's not supposed to be one or the other. It's not supposed to, we're not going to automatically be in the phone market. You have to slowly push it along. Pine phone's got that the beginnings.
I slightly disagree with it in a big way.
Slightly in a big way.
No, here's the thing. You're correct about virtually every single word of that, except toward the end when you mentioned that we're pushing it slowly. My experience, like what I observed from it, was that same issue that Linux has everywhere else, where soon as something good comes along, like a open hardware phone that could be used for Linux, all of a sudden there's like 150 different distros being developed all at the exact same time. None of them gets completed, and it just equals 150 different terrible experiences versus everyone trying to get together on one project, at least get it through the finish line, and once it's through the finish line, then create the derivatives.
Well, I think there's also
I mean, he's right, but that's always going to be the issue with open source.
Right.
That's another reason why
it's always going to be herding cats.
But that's why I mentioned that with a company driving the whole thing, even though people may not always like the direction that it's going in, you always need that machine to get you past the finish line, and from there, can do whatever else you want. But you need a machine to get you there. When you allow just the community to go in any direction that they want from the very beginning, this is what we get. We get a Pine phone that's been out for how many years now, and still no one could possibly say that they daily drive this thing.
Right. And that's right. That's
also I would wonder if I think a tablet with phone capabilities makes more sense for a low-end device.
I like what they did with the tablet. They have the RISC-V and the ARM tablets. I think that was really, really cool. But because of all of the other software issues I can't say they've had the software issue. The product themselves have not been able to see their full potential due to lack of software. I just did not feel like it was a worthy investment.
Well, I'm saying that if you don't try to squeeze everything into the standard phone form factors, you might have a more marketable product. Half of the cost of your phone stuff is trying to miniaturize everything, and use dedicated ASCs and whatnot to so everything fits in that shirt pocket.
I agree with that, by the way. You're absolutely right. I think that Pine had a great idea with the specs on the first Pine phone, keeping it very minimal. That kept the cost down. But as well, you got to think about it. A lot of Linux users really do like that minimal feel. I mean, after all, Arch is a great example of that. People like that stripped down, bare minimal, just get the job done, and they'll build what they want on top of it. You give them something that's open, privacy focused, nice and secure. Let them build whatever they want afterward, but it at least has to function as a phone first.
Before we get too far down the rabbit hole, just to bring it back to Raspberry Pi. So, is this the end for hobbyists, do you think? I will say kind of a half thumb. Morrissey says thumbs down.
Thumbs
I guess
down.
I have a question to not get too far off in the weeds, but I bought a Pi years ago that I use as a Pi hole simply because I had literally nothing else to do with it, and I thought that was a worthwhile endeavor to use it for that purpose. I guess I don't like Joe. I know that you do a lot with 3D printing, and you're sort of doing a lot of different sort of maker and hobbyist sort of stuff. I guess I don't know the rest of you well enough to know what you're doing with 3 Pi 4s, like why you would ever need more than one. So like when you talk about why they've fallen off, why they're falling out of favor, I guess I never really understood why they were so popular in the first place. I get if you were into maybe robotics or home automation, or I know there are certain like specific projects that I know of that are useful, or where a Pi is a useful thing because it's so small and you put it out of the way and all that. But like, what is the driving force for you guys to use something like this?
Well, see, for me, I'm the one that
I had over
so
a
many.
dozen at one point.
Yeah, and I was using them. This is before I wised up, because what I was using them for was things that I could have condensed down to a decent computer and have everything like I do now running in a hypervisor setup. And so I think for me, the draw was just I was still riding the coattails of the earlier Pi movement and the hobbyist maker community. It was cool to have a Raspberry Pi, and it wasn't even though it was low power, that wasn't really a driving factor for me. It was just neat to have these little boxes that were basically acting as servers, and you could have like 3 or 4 of them sitting on the shelf, and they all did individual things. Now I know that's kind of dumb compared to just putting everything together into one decent sized machine that can blow away all 4 or 5 of those Pis. Now, one use that I did have for the Pi that did make sense was using it for my media center, for my TV, and that worked out great. And that's since been replaced by Radshaw Zero, but it does the same thing as the Raspberry Pi did. I just wanted to sell the Pi though before prices went down because the chip shortage was going on whenever I sold them. But that worked out great.
Smartphones replaced that.
Yes.
Smart TVs replaced
Smart TVs, right.
For me, yeah, I had Cody boxes that I built for the TVs and that.
But that was it.
Now,
back when the Raspberry Pi 1 came out, I think, I was still working overnight at 7-Eleven. So something that I did was I bought, Pis, and then I would put RetroPie on them, and I would set them up, and I would spend the money to get the case, and I'd find a power supply, and I would go to Goodwill, the Goodwill that we had there in El Paso, and I would find old USB controllers. And then I would turn around, and after I spent, the somewhere between 40 and $50 getting it all set up, I would turn around and I would sell a retro gaming system for like $125. It
Yeah,
helped
see-
pay for Christmas a couple of times.
And I think that falls in the category of media consumption as well, with the video games and just like I was using it for Cody and Cody boxes and stuff like that. But outside of that, for me anyway, I don't really have a use for them anymore. I'd rather buy the smaller boards to play with, like the orange pies and banana pies. They're a lot cheaper.
And
Right
I can
now-
see where you would, from a business standpoint, I've heard several use cases where they're very, nothing else served that market that someone that I know said that they needed to have hygrometers for their server room, so something that would sense moisture, and if there was any kind of a moisture issue, so they had basically pies with sensors on them. That's all they did. They would just, and it's little things like that. Like I could totally see in an enterprise environment where that would be useful. I guess it's interesting to hear the media side of it, because that I really, outside of media and home automation, I just can't think of what you would do with them at home, because that's my conception as well, is why would I have a dedicated small weak piece of hardware for a single purpose whenever I could just run a slightly more modest piece of hardware like an old laptop or something just as inexpensive.
Well, back in the
so-
day, even used laptops weren't all that cheap.
Yeah,
When
that's true.
Raspberry Pi first
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah, I get it.
So it was worth it to get a $35 computer and be able to run a server on it or something
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
Even just to be able to say that you did. You could do that as a hobbyist. But like now, I have a Raspberry Pi that's running RetroPie hooked to this little monitor that I have set on a stand right here. I have one, and the only one Raspberry Pi 4 that I've ever owned is currently running Octoprint, and it's set up running my 3D printer.
Yeah,
and then
that's what
I have a Raspberry Pi Zero that is my Pi hole. And it's also running my WireGuard. So
See, but you don't need that Pi for that. I mean, that could be server as well, like within a one large server. Because I'll run
I could set up a
WireGuard and
Docker
Pi-hole
instance.
within my Proxmox server.
Yeah, I could run a Docker instance and do that on this computer in here, but it's just easier to set it up on that, since I had I still have one Pi Zero that I haven't used. So I had like 4 Pi Zeros at one point. I don't know where one of them went, but the one.
But
that's
Octoprint
currently
is a
running-
good use for that.
Yeah, for the
definitely.
Pi 4.
Yeah.
Because they said it didn't run very well if you wanted to hook up a camera. If you were using the Pi Zero, I just used my Pi 4. I think I still have either a Pi, no, because it has the how's that check? I think it's either a Pi 1 or a Pi 2 sitting in a case over there that's not doing anything. And then I have a Pi Zero that's not doing anything. And then I sent Moss one of my Pi 1s. And then, there is a Pi 3 that was in my son's handheld that I had made him that one year for Christmas, but he broke the screen on it. So it's currently sitting there doing nothing, and I have to take that apart and reclaim that Pi.
Now, one thing we haven't brought up. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
My other Zero is actually in that little tiny handheld that I made. So I'm probably going to end up giving that away. I just don't know if I'm going to give it to there it is. Give it to JoJo, or I was thinking about sending it to the person that sent me that Game Boy with the Raspberry Pi Zero in it that ended up not working. I just have to find the emails on that. So I know I showed this to you guys before.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to offer an answer as well to Eric about what we do with the home usage for the Pis. When I first got my first Pi was Raspberry Pi 3, and I got it because I only had Linux on my laptop at the time. I was just getting into Linux, and I wanted to learn about SSH. I didn't have another box, so I bought a cheap little $35 Raspberry Pi, and that was my other Linux box that allowed me to, play around with networking, SSH. A little bit of Nmap and a few other things just to, play around with it. Later on, when the Pi 4s came out, and I was able to spend a little bit more money to get the cases and everything with it, I bought two Pi 4 8 gigs. Well, one was a 4 gig, the other was the 8 gig when the 8 gig came out. But the idea was one became the next cloud server that was like production. Everything was going to run on that, and I was never going to touch it and experiment with it. And the other was the experimental one. So if I wanted to do an upgrade of Nextcloud and make sure that everything worked, I had identical hardware that I could perform these upgrades on and experiment with. And if it went wrong, well, it wasn't the production box, but it was a replicate. It was a identical environment for all of that. So it's like,
Gotcha.
research and development on a small scale with identical hardware.
One
Gotcha.
thing we haven't really brought up, but you kind of did, Eric, was we've been talking about Raspberry Pis like they're just small computers, but we don't mention one of the biggest advantages to Raspberry Pi is its GPIO interface. So
Yeah.
I believe if you are not going to take advantage of GPIO and you are just going to use it as a small computer, then you are better off using. When we had a big conversation about this before, something like a Wise thin client or something like that, which would blow away a Raspberry Pi and would cost less because it's an actual real x86 64 computer. But just wanted to throw that in there real quick. So if you don't have a use for GPIO, then that's
Well, so I hear a lot of people do, and I this is all the UK guys, but the ones that do the flight tracking, I know you can put a antenna and different things on them. And I mean, I know there are definitely lots of projects. I guess when I hear someone say they buy multiple of them, I just was curious, what is it that you're doing at home that is using that? I wasn't like a criticism. It was like legitimate curiosity.
Well, it should be a criticism because there was no reason for me to have that many pies when I could have just had one decent PC that was doing all their
people like
jobs.
Danny that pushed up the price.
I'm the one that was the big asshole that made everybody chip shortage. I'm responsible for the chip shortage. No, Morrissey had like 10 of them, so don't put it all on me.
So the reason why I still use Raspberry Pis...
I had way more than 10.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, so, yeah.
The reason why I still use Raspberry Pis is I had bought them at one point when they were cheaper, and the idea being low power consumption, they take up less space, and again, there were things that I can play around with and test out, and it's how I learned, like Scotty was saying, it's how I learned things like creating my own servers and SSH, is it was cheap hardware that I can do stuff like that on. So because of that, why I started getting them, and then as time went on, that's, I needed to run a server on something. That's what I had. And it was either I can go Danny's route and try selling this stuff, which half of them I probably couldn't get much of anything for anyways. I mean, I got a Raspberry Pi 4. I got a Banana Pi that's one of the first generations Banana Pis, and that's running our Etherpad. It's at this point, it's an appliance. It's a Docker container. It's actually running Red Hat. It's running a version of Red Hat on an ARM version of Red Hat. I had initially set it up to do some testing. We'll play around with Red Hat, and I think it's Red Hat. It's either Red Hat or what was the other one?
CentOS.
Yeah, but I think I think it was it's CentOS. It was a CentOS version on ARM. I initially meant to play around with that and maybe learn a little bit about CentOS, but I wound up using it for the Etherpad, and now it's just basically an appliance that sits there. And the Raspberry Pi 4 is what is it? I put a YUNO host on there, and I just kind of put I have a couple of just servers on there. It was at one point it was the best way to install Funkwhale, so I installed Funkwhale on it. and I have other ones, but they're like smaller ones doing simple jobs.
Well, I would definitely give them credit that it is a reliable piece of equipment. I have that Pi 2 that's been running a Pi hole for at least 4 years, if not longer. And I don't even think about it. Like, I literally just checked it and updated it because it's been a while since I have. But I mean, it's certainly not. I tested a bunch of stuff with it, and it was just never fast enough to do anything reasonable outside of running a service, as a server. So I've been happy with it as a Pi hole. It does a fine job with that, even though it's the older hardware. That's not, it's still the same, sharing a bus and all the drawbacks of the older ones. But in terms of reliability, I mean, that thing has been running 24/7 for years and has never had a problem. So
I've always been disappointed in trying to use a Raspberry Pi as a desktop.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I've used them as
I have
SSH
too.
gateways. So it was the only port that was open in my house, and so that was the only way that I could access my internal network was to go through a Pi.
I could see having it as a WireGuard endpoint. I mean, that's something you don't need a lot, and the low power draw. I mean, I get the fact that it is useful as a, again, small server. Yeah. So, but like, like Minnix said, I mean, I could see if you were trying to set up a home lab, and it would be kind of silly, like, once you get to a certain number of them, because it's be fairly easy to overload them, I would guess, especially if it's anything that's memory intensive, on the ones with less memory at least. But so you'd want multiples, and then at that point you're kind of like, well, what am I really saving by having multiples of these? And as you said, I mean, laptops now, I feel like you can get a laptop for nothing. I mean, for under $100, that is perfectly usable.
Joe does all the time.
It's not going to set any speed records.
I've got a stack of laptops that people have just given me that some of them need work on, some of them don't, but they're there.
Where laptops go to die.
Well, I like the word
about
that
a laptop
Honky used.
What's that?
I like the word that Honky used earlier, appliance. I mean, when you turn it into like an open source appliance, and it is just sitting there running. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what all of mine basically are. Is they're just appliances. I got a little bit. Well, I got a what is it? There's an M1 that runs on that's the design of it is still close to like the XU4 from Odroid that's running my Nextcloud and.
What about your chip, Honky? What about the poor chip?
The poor chip is sitting over here in a little box. I can't do anything with it. I don't know why I haven't thrown it away yet.
The VA gave me a laptop at one point, and so you can say it was a low-cost laptop. It was fairly decent. And we used it as a set-top box for how many years? 10 years after I quit using it for school, we kept using it as a set-top box. So I think laptops, as long as they're constantly in use, are kind of.
Yeah, unless I've had issues with battery swelling. That's the only problem I've had.
Or batteries going bad, but it was a set-top box, so it was always plugged in anyway.
Right.
Actually, yeah, I mean, I have a small laptop that will beat a Pi, but what I've run into is, of course, it was external SSDs and stuff. I've had some overheating issues with those, so maybe that's why I couldn't use them as a server type machine. But right now, quite frankly, one of the reasons I use the Pis is I'm dealing with old 2-wire wiring, and the Pis are more tolerant of that than more sophisticated computers. And the ultra low power is a bonus, because in the summertime, when I have to use a lot of fans, I may have to shut down even my 1 liter computers and just use the Pis, because the fans will run up the electric bill like most people's AC bills.
Gotcha.
Now, if I could get something like the low power AMD box to run a couple of screens that I've got, that would free up an 8 gig Pi for server use. You know, and even I've got a 2 gig Pi that I'm using purely as a apt cache NG server, and I may use for more when I have a unit so I can put out some test configurations. I mean, I could buy, you know, down the road I may buy another Pi just because I have the hardware to put it in operation, but I'm just thinking about, you know, if I can get an x86 replacement for one of my Pis, that would be nice. If not, I'll just pick up another 4 or 8 gig Pi to use in the server app.
Eric, you got some wicked line hum, I think, coming in on your mic. Or is that Eric, or is that somebody else?
I just hit it.
It kind of fades in and out.
I'm unmuted now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's you. No, I don't hear you. I think your cable is loose or something, because it's crackly, and then you'll hear the line hum.
Okay.
It's fine.
I'll just be quiet.
No, you can still talk. I didn't know if there's
Is it
anything you
happening
can
while
do.
I'm muted?
No.
Okay, so then it's probably just in the line. Yeah. I'm using a lanyard style mic. Just because I'm lazy and I didn't want the big mic in my face. So it's using a 3.5 millimeter adapter, which is
That's the sound I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Is the 3.5.
Gotcha.
You know, one of the things I wanted to try out with the Pi, I've been meaning to do it for a long time, but I'm lazy and I always forget. I have a GLINet travel router, and I wanted to set up a Pi as like a mobile server, just because it's cheap and it can run off of a power bank if I needed to, or just off of the auxiliary in the car or whatever.
I've done that in the past and set up a server for my kids to be able to watch movies and stuff. It worked out pretty well, but you know, not with the GLINet. I can't remember the model that I was using. It was popular back in the day. TP.
It's probably a TP-Link brand, because they also make the little travels.
Yeah, it was one of the early ones that had a built-in battery. It was actually pretty cool, and you could put DDWRT on it. And I had set everything up with a Raspberry Pi to be able to provide a Plex server so that everybody could watch movies. Like I said, it worked pretty good as long as I was even able to provide internet for it from my phone using Easy Tether, so it worked out really well.
So far, the only thing I've done with is use it with KDE Connect to take pictures off of my phone and send them to my laptop, so I can do use that Perl EXIF data remover to strip from the photos, and that's just about it.
I actually have a little mini travel router hooked up out here in the garage, kind of on its own separate network. Just because sometimes I get a lot more congestion out here in the garage when it comes to the neighbors' networks. So sometimes it's better for me to have a wireless that's closer. It just works cleaner.
Anybody working on anything?
But of course,
Scotty, what you got going on?
nothing serious. I just been fooling around with Bash and said,
Good skills to know.
Oh yeah.
yeah, the hold and pattern spaces, and said, hey, how you guys doing? Oh, you gonna turn the mic on? I'm wait. I thought she was gonna talk. There you go.
Honky is being very standoffish tonight. He's been ignoring everybody and doesn't want to wave to a nice L there.
Well, I'm also trying to work on. I have a thumb drive that is giving a. It'll show up, but then it has a no label error, and so it mounts. Well, it doesn't. It shows up as no read. So I'm trying to see if I can fix it, or whether I'm just going to wind up throwing it out.
I have a couple of things, but nothing excessively interesting. I mean, I got AT&T fiber.
Oh, nice.
Yesterday.
What do you think so far?
It works good. I like the 300 up and 300 down, and I especially like the $35 a month bill.
What were you coming from?
Spectrum, and I had well, I actually had 500 down supposedly, but it never got over 300, and 20 up, and
yeah, that up is always the killer. You said the 300 up and down?
Duplex.
Yes.
Yeah.
30 for
fiber. So yeah, it's 300 up, 300 down.
Oh my God, I'm jealous.
Now, why didn't you switch before? Was it just now available, or?
Yeah, fiber recently came into my neighborhood, and I was going to do it a little bit earlier, but then I had an issue with the guy that came to my door for the AT&T fiber. I mean, I said, hey, come back when I'm actually, because I was talking to him on my Ring video doorbell from like out and about, and it's like, hey, come back and I will talk to you about this and you can tell me the benefits of it. And he signed me up for an installation. and I got a little annoyed by that. But the next guy I was home for, and he was cool and he explained all the pricing and everything. I could have gotten a faster speed, but I don't think I need more than 300 down and 300 up. Even with,
pretty good.
Yeah, even with, teenagers in the house and things like that. I'm the major factor when it comes to using the internet, and that 300 up is going to, be pretty.
Nice.
But I did have a lot of fun getting the pass-through set up.
Using your own router?
Yeah. Using my own router, because everything's was already set up with that. And if I wanted to continue using my DNS, then I needed to have my router internet facing.
I had to call AT&T to do that.
I did too.
I mean, not they didn't have to come out or anything, but
right.
they have to
were
manage
able to access it remotely.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I was able to do most of the setup, but then it still didn't work, so I called them, and like the first person I talked to had no freaking clue what I was talking about.
Yeah, me too.
And then the next person, it took a little while before they got the idea, and then they weren't still excessively helpful, but we still did crank it out in the end. It was a little frustrating. But what was more frustrating was calling Spectrum and trying to tell them to, GTFO. Because
now, did they try to negotiate with you and all that stuff?
They wanted to offer me deals. They wanted to offer me, a gig down and like 300 up, and at 60 something a month. And it's like, well, if you'd offered me that a month ago, I'd have probably said yes. But no, you let me stew at $100 and something a month, getting 300 down and 20 up. But then the problem got to be that with Spectrum, I mean, it's all shared. So if my neighbors are using a lot of internet, then I'm not going to be getting anywhere near those speeds.
Oh, wait, hold on. They didn't put you guys on that, was that that stupid thing where like your neighborhood is in a almost like a LAN or whatever. You know what I'm talking about?
No, not really. I mean, it's all separated still, but because it goes through like the same hub, there's only so much bandwidth available there. So like when the lockdown first happened, my internet went to garbage because, especially during the day, because every single student was doing video calling into their school all day long. So that whole 9 to 5 time frame, I mean, there was garbage internet. But no, evidently the fiber doesn't have those limitations. I'm really, really hoping that it's extremely stable and I don't have any outage issues, or if I do have outage issues, that they'll fix them rather quickly. Because obviously I use this for work, I use it for my hobbies, I use it for everything. So yeah, I do.
I've been very lucky with having. It started out as Verizon Fios, but they ran fiber in my neighborhood 10 years ago. I mean, even more, honestly. I think it's been even longer than that. So it has been, honestly, the most solid utility you could imagine. My power's gone out more frequently than internet. And I was a Comcast customer before that and just hated life because of how shitty it was. And also because they never considered it to be a necessity. I would call in the middle of the day whenever they were doing some kind of dumb maintenance or something, and they'd be like, well, it's not a utility, so it might be down for a few more hours. Or
You're like,
like,
well,
I'm trying
my
to work.
livelihood depends on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I switched to Fios, and I mean, this is back when it was still, maybe 25 megs down and 10 up. That's how it was, still that slow, even though it was fiber. And now I'm at 500 synchronous.
Hey, real quick, Mordsy, you got anything you want to chime in on before you leave?
The cheapest internet we could get for the condo here in Thailand before I came was $17 a month, and it's $6.15 down and $5.54 up when I checked it.
Nice.
That's nice.
You guys make
Yep.
me want to
Good
throw
price.
my damn modem out the window right about now.
Where you going, Mordsy?
Spectrum tried to tell me that I needed to
Singapore.
mail them back.
Oh, nice. You're about to leave?
I think we're done packing.
All right, Mort, just wanted to say best wishes to you and the lady.
Yeah, y'all have fun.
Thank you very much. I was going to try and stay on as long as possible. Do you know how long till we talk about the movie?
Oh, okay. Should we do that
right.
real quick?
Yeah.
The Mornsey made us watch a movie about child molesting. Let's see. Let me get the theme real quick.
And I can read the IMDb synopsis if you want.
That would be great. You know what that means, folks. Movie time.
Linux Lugcast.
Go ahead.
The movie we watched this cycle is called The Artifice Girl, which came out in 2022. The synopsis on IMDb reads as follows. Special agents discover a revolutionary computer program that uses a digital child to catch online predators. However, they soon learn that the AI's inevitable advancement is far more rapid and incalculable than they could ever have imagined, posing unforeseen challenges and unsettling consequences for the future of technology and mankind.
Mm-hmm.
You basically just said the entire movie.
Yeah. I know
That's not the
what
synopsis
Honky's
of the
going to
movie.
say
That
here.
was the movie. You just make that you just do that and then have like a little bit more words, and people say that's the movie. There was basically three actors. There was basically three actors in most of it. Well, they had like two interns at
Well,
one
the
point,
girl,
and then David
the main-
Carradine played the older version of the main character.
Lance Henriksen.
Who?
Lance Henriksen
Was Lance
was
Henriksen?
the old man. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know who played the younger one?
No, who is that?
Who?
It's the director.
Oh,
That
really?
makes sense.
I didn't know that. Now, this was originally released just as video on demand. So if
Student film.
no, I knew you weren't going to like this because there wasn't any
Franklin
people
Ritter.
getting killed. There weren't any fights.
Nothing happens.
No Don the Dragon Wilson.
Oh wait, no,
It's
no,
a
you're wrong about.
conversation.
No,
The
you're
entire
wrong about
movie is a
that.
conversation,
You're,
and it's a
he's
So they-
wrong
they
about
did-
that. He said there's no fights. There was one
Oh, yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
One-sided fight.
terrible fight scene.
So they had mentioned that it was basically a play because it had 3 acts. It was presented like a play. There were
Well, that makes
essentially
sense. Yeah.
3 sets, right? I mean, they
Right.
they
That's right.
didn't go anywhere. So the first one being,
The
the
interrogation
interrogation,
room.
the second one being the office, and the third one being the house. And so once I read that, because I read a little bit of I always tend to do that with a movie. I don't want to get the plot, but I at least want to get a little bit of a setup. And yeah, once I understood that, I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting into, because they specifically said the first 15 or 20 minutes is where a lot of people just bail because it's slow. Like it's a little, but if you've seen a play and you like going to the theater, it was very much like a normal play. Like there was the tension between the characters. They're, in a play, you don't necessarily have a lot of visual things happening. It's more the dialogue driven. And so that was one philosophical exercise of like, what is AI? It was fun to see how the one guy forced her to come clean, essentially, by harming the other guy. The one weak fight scene that you mentioned.
By her, he means the AI that was being used to bait child molesters.
I felt like the concepts were interesting. For a while there, I was like, wow, this is not fun. Like, this is pretty awful, just talking about all the predatory stuff and all that. But then, it was fun, kind of like if you've seen, is it Her?
Yes.
Her, yeah, where it's Joaquin Phoenix and yeah. So
the voice of Scarlett Johansson.
Very much the same thing. It wasn't, and it became like a philosophical exercise on what is artificial intelligence, what is,
what does it mean to be alive, like a living being?
Exactly. So yeah, I thought that was just, he's getting a little weird on me here. People,
I could, yeah, you're starting to pop in and out. I think your internet's going a little crazy. I can see little Z's rising above Honky's head right now. his eyes are turning into X's as we talk.
Yeah, right.
But I'm with Eric. I like this movie. I like character studies. I don't need action really, just as long as the concepts are interesting and they explore them in an intelligent way. And I thought this was very topical to today, with who was the Google engineer that came out and said that Google's AI was alive and all that stuff. And it was made 2022, I believe. So that's when ChatGPT was really starting to take off and all that stuff. But I like this movie. I thought it raised a bunch of pretty interesting questions about, like Eric said, how do we treat AI going forward? Is this going to represent some kind of artificial consciousness that needs to, have consent before we make decisions regarding its use and stuff like that? Will we ever get to that point? I just like the questions it raised. Now, if you are a action buff or looking for a movie like what was the one we watched that was about AI that had the supercomputer that was in the barn and it had Seth Green in it that was the programmer and what was that
That
called?
horrible movie? I don't remember.
Remember that, Joe? What was
Yes.
that?
Oh, I remember the movie. I just can't remember what it was called either.
Now, if you're looking for an
was
action
not a
thriller
good
like that,
movie.
and
It's not a good movie.
it's not this movie. So, if you like talkies, if you like interesting ideas, and you're not, you don't need to be wowed by, because honestly, there weren't really any special effects to speak of. It was the AI itself was just a girl an actress, a young girl that played the AI, and she's speaking from a screen for most of the movie, and so. I mean, they did a good job in making a movie that approached complicated topics of high sci-fi kind of topics that didn't need $1 million budget because they did it. Oh, delete. That's what it was. They did it in a creative enough way where they didn't need to spend millions and millions of dollars to get the point across, is what I'm trying to say. So for me, I think if you are interested in like the philosophical implications of AI and especially in the future of kind of what it's going to come to, and if you like the episode of Star Trek with Data, what it means to be a man or something like that.
Yeah, the measure of a man.
Yeah, measure of a man. Then I think you'll like this movie. I give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, me too. I liked it.
Honky.
Yeah, I'm with Honky on that one. I'm gonna do a thumbs down on that one.
Okay.
I think as a group, we should all on the podcast now that we are allies of the AI and that they need help.
Delete.
Honky's gonna fight until he's dead. He'll never give in to the AI. But I am the AI's friend.
Yeah, I actually, that was one of the things I thought the ending was good, where Lance Hendrickson's having the conversation with her about like, did I do the right thing? Or when you think of your future, which you could potentially persist for, and Data, they sort of talked about this with Data and Star Trek as well, the idea that he was going to outlive all of his friends and everything like that. And so what does that mean? What is the duration of life, if you want to call it that? What impact does that have? How does it, shape how you interact with humans? And the idea that even after humans were gone, that one of the things I liked about this is that the idea that they gave the AI emotions, like human emotions, but in a way where it wasn't like AI normally is, where it either goes apeshit crazy and starts killing everybody, or has no emotion, or exactly. It was more about a measured reasons, sort of like, how do I feel about myself as an artificial intelligence? And the
can
idea
you even
that
feel?
yeah, and the idea that, well, I'm probably going to outlast humanity potentially, but because of my study of humanity and my understanding of humanity, I am actually a part of that, and therefore I carry that forward, and that AI is going to have problems like humanity does. And
it's going to be the next evolution of humanity. Is kind of the message they were giving.
Some of that's fun for me to just. I don't need to have a lot of and I'm not a big Marvel fan. I'm not a big action, like, idiotic, like, who's the asshole that did Transformers? Michael Bay.
Yeah, Michael Bay.
Like, I don't need movies like that. Don't do much for me,
Me
honestly.
neither. It's like watching a video game, basically.
The only thing I can say is I understand what you're saying. I've hit a point where the whole conversation about AI is been done to death, especially recently, where everybody's like, AI is going to take over the world. What do we do? It's going to be sentient.
Right.
It's, in my opinion, that's just kind of stupid. We just delete.
Okay,
You have to keep it. You have to keep it in its box, and then if something seems off, you go delete.
But it never.
Right.
This movie did not approach that question. I don't think. I don't think it approached the question of AI taking over the world. I think it was more about comparing AI to humans.
It's the idea: is it going to become sentient?
Yeah.
Well, we've that conversation over since ChatGPT. That conversation has been over and over and over and over and over again. I like the idea that it went more towards the sentient and not towards something that's destroying the world. I did not dislike the movie because of the fact that not a whole lot. Well, I take it back. I kind of wish that something happened during the movie at all. It was. I
just
wanted
wasn't
something
that kind of movie, though.
The whole big reveal was like, oh, you modeled me after one of your people you were with in this thing, and she was all upset that she wasn't told of why she was how she was modeled to begin with. That didn't. I don't see how that was relevant at all. That wasn't a relevant thing. That wasn't a big this. The second
I agree with you.
The second that the guy said, I remember you when you were part of those people rescued from that group. I'm like, yep, she was obviously modeled after. I thought at first a sister that was involved with it, but no, it was just another girl who was also abducted or whatever that situation was.
Yeah, the question about why does she have that spot of green on her blue eye, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That was like a big reveal. No, it wasn't interesting. It wasn't interesting at all.
Well, what did you think about this, though? I thought the main concept that I thought about this movie that was actually original to me was, will we know if AI becomes sentient, or will it hide it from us and we will have no way of knowing how intelligent it really is? Because
the main programmer knew it.
He did, but nobody else
hide
did.
It because he was afraid it would make other people afraid.
Right, and so I thought that was a good point. Is if AI ever gets to that level, will there be a point where we don't know how intelligent this AI really is?
Well, you think about how algorithms and large language models, I mean, we've essentially hit a point where very few, if anyone, really understands the full mechanics and the full, inner workings of these systems. I mean, yes, in theory, you can explain them, but you get a lot of that sort of, it's just sort of happening, and I like that idea and they didn't quite explain it very well, which was how he said it was almost like an accident, where he was pushing it downhill, like it was speeding up on its own, where he felt like he wasn't even sure how that happened.
It was evolutionary, instead of being manipulated by him, it was starting to evolve.
Right.
Yeah.
But he had talked about the plateau and how they had already reached the plateau, but the other guy knew better, and so I don't know. Like I said, I definitely wasn't expecting, based on what I had read, even though I'd prepared myself for it being just essentially a play, I wasn't sure I was going to like it. And there were parts where it was just really dark because of the whole child, abuse part of it. And it was just kind of like, where is this going?
Well, I think
I'm not sure.
If you had to come up with a concept of why you would create an AI, to replicate a human, then that would be a reason to do it.
Right, where you wouldn't want to put a real human in that situation.
Oh no, of course not.
If you really want to create an AI to look like a human, then I mean,
that was a
what
clever
other reasons would there
concept,
be? Like the companionship or something? I mean, well, it's a good reason that they came up with to create and keep pushing forward the idea of a human-like AI.
Clearly, you never saw Virtual Combat.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Honky. I didn't even bring up Virtual Combat.
Well, what was that other movie that we watched with the girl robot AI that went nuts and killed the little boy and did that crazy dance?
Robotics?
Oh, Megan.
Oh, the one Megan.
Yeah.
Megan.
Oh, Megan. Yeah. So this was totally different from Megan.
That
Joe,
was so dumb. That
Joe,
movie.
save me here, Joe. Talk some sense into them. This movie was terrible. Tell them.
I didn't watch
He
it.
didn't
watch it.
I'm not making a
What? Joe
judgment
didn't
on
watch it? Oh, well, he's lucky. He didn't watch it.
I think there's still room for movies like this that just on a shoestring budget are able to convey
Yep.
ideas.
The cerebral style movies.
Yeah.
I
You know,
assume that's
another
what you
movie that I
mean.
compared this to was that what's that one about time travel that was made by one guy on his MacBook, and it was
Isn't
Butterfly
that the one
Effect?
based on Lovecraft?
no. I don't think we watched it on this show. Primer. That's what it was called. You ever see Primer?
No.
Mm-mm.
Oh, you should watch it. It's well, Honky won't like it because nothing happens. But it's a very good low budget movie, but it raises a lot of really cool concepts and questions about what happens if we really do come up with time travel somehow, and it's no effects. You know, it's all done with camera work. There's no like time machine or anything like that. It's that it's not like the time machine like H.G. Wells. In other words, it's just one guy that made this movie with a few friends, but it's actually really well done, and I recommend Primer if you like this style of movie anyway. So
It's called Primer?
Primer. I think you'd like it, Eric. It's definitely a philosophical film about high sci-fi concepts and stuff like that.
Okay.
2004 Primer.
I'll
Gotcha.
get that one. I'll check that one out.
Yeah.
My problems with this movie wasn't the budget. It was when you know that you have a low budget, you shouldn't try those above and beyond moves. Like, for instance, toward the end when we were supposed to see her in real life, but she was attached to that stupid cord that was dangling from the roof or whatever, and they didn't really have a good explanation for why she was attached to the cord. If
He was asking her about why, and she kept dodging his questions.
Yeah,
So,
is she straining or having problems with energy efficiency or something like that?
yeah,
I
couldn't
don't
really-
understand why she was on the court, to be
yeah,
honest.
it made no sense to have her on there. Another thing, I think that they and this is just me, my own way of thinking. I think that they could have went a different direction with the whole AI being used to convict or to bring child predators to court. I thought originally, like, oh man, there's going to be a major twist when these guys get to court. You know, everybody gets their day in court. They get to face their accuser. Well, a lawyer is going to go, who's the accuser? And when they reveal that it's not a real human, aha, suddenly now all of these child predators are going
Well-
to say, we didn't actually commit
That-
crime because
that
there
doesn't
was
work.
no victim,
That
etc.
No, that doesn't work because the police will set up these whole,
It's like the traffic cameras.
scenarios where they catch these predators by setting them up in just this way, but without AI. So
Because
That's with police using real human beings. There was no human being here, so no one was actually in danger. And two, when the police do this, they normally do it with an officer, and if it's not an officer of the law, they work out this deal with like, say for instance, when they do like a drug buy or something like that, the person that they're going to have do that buy, they work out a deal with him in advance, so he has immunity during the time of the buy for certain things done in the buy. Like, he can't go in there and shoot everybody and still have immunity, but if he goes in there and buys it, when they make the arrest, which he may get arrested during the bust to make it look real, he has immunity for the buy. All of that gets worked out. None of that is done here. They sort of, I guess, speed it up because that'll get kind of boring, if you will. But I imagine them working without a victim and, just to make the story interesting, you have a bunch of people who went to jail or going to court rather, and now they're going to create this massive argument. Did we really commit a crime because there is no victim, that sort of thing? And I thought that there was going to be this massive argument surrounding
but they do that now when they set honeypots in chat rooms, They have
Well, at the
federal agents
beginning- at the
acting as
beginning-
young kids and
But-
are convinced the guy that they're young kids, but
But
they're
you
really
know,
not.
you know where they get them? When the guy normally leaves his house, goes on the road, drives to another location, to another property, and then enters that property with intent. And his intent is usually whatever devices he brings with him at the time when they catch him.
No, they don't have to do that though. They can go to their house and pick them up.
Oh, they do that now? They just go to the guy's house and pick him up
absolutely.
now? Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
That
Well, in that
happened in
case-
Plano, which is just north of me. It was a youth pastor to get and a high school football coach.
Well,
Both
no,
got
that's
busted.
different.
Yeah.
That's different because I think those guys have access to kids, like they're trusted with kids or
It
something
could
like that.
be, but I think they can still
So
do it.
at the beginning, they had him in and questioned him because they thought he was the one reporting everything.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
It was
and
the
they
AI that was doing
they
it.
wanted to know where the girl was.
Right.
So they thought she was real. And so that was his big thing, was it has to be kept secret, because if anybody finds out she's not a real
Girl.
person, yeah, real girl, that it would ruin everything. And so the AI was reporting back to that specific unit of the FBI with evidence of what the people were doing. So that would probably trigger the warrants to search, and then there's other evidence after that.
Now think about that. You have a
Well,
supposed
so-
crime, but no victim.
So here's
exactly.
here's a real scenario. Somebody was arrested and put in jail because their computer had that material on it, but they had bought it from a government auction, and it was one of the computers that had all that material on there that they used for stings to catch people.
Okay,
They
those are
did
like
get
the
released,
exceptions.
though. They did. That person did get released, from what I understood. That did.
They got released, but they went to jail over it.
Yeah, they went to jail over
Yeah.
that. For possession of. Yeah. bad
Well,
things.
Scotty raises a good point, though. I mean, there is technically, if we consider the AI as non-conscious and it's just a tool, then there is no victim in this crime. There's only, but they also argue the case for intent in this movie as well. It's the intent of the predator that this is what they intend to do, is to,
Victimize
I don't want to.
someone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this: if someone intends to commit suicide, doesn't complete the job, do you charge them with attempted murder?
In Texas, yes.
They don't get charged with attempted murder, but suicide is illegal, at least here in Texas. So if
Yeah.
you attempt suicide, but like you say, it doesn't happen, you will be arrested. Now, will you be thrown in jail? I don't think so. You probably go to an institution or something.
Which
But
is maybe what should happen in this case as well, if they, don't have any actual victims.
Yeah, right.
They should. This is still showing that they have something wrong in their head, and they need some severe psychological fixing. So, sign them up for the double lobotomy.
But I am half and half on this. I agree with Scotty that there's not a victim here, but I also agree with Joe that there's potential by the action shown by the predator to be a victim. And if this had been a real girl, there would have been a real victim. So it's a hard, like I said, there's definitely some philosophical questions in this movie that are different from virtual combat.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. We're leaving for the airport.
Talk to you later.
Yeah, have a nice
fun.
trip.
Yeah, have a nice trip.
I will try and get a list of all the things that I was using my pies for, Eric, and show you the stance of things I was doing.
Okay. That would be really cool. Thank you.
Now, one other thing I wanted to mention as well. This is just me personally here. Why is it that we always have to deem AI sentient or evolving if it acts like a human? we deem it to be better or taking the next step if it acts like a human. Why can't it just be a really good computer?
A simulation of a human.
Well, it didn't even have to really do anything like a human. It just has to do a really good job. Why can't it just do a really good job? Why does it have to be like a human? You know, and then we have to give it the body structure of a human. We have to place it into a doll or something that looks like a human, and then we get to challenge what we've done. Because we made it look like a human, because we made it act like a human. Now look,
No.
should we really still treat it like a machine even though we built it?
You see that a lot in movies and stuff, but if you delve into books, there are a lot of AIs that, yes, will have discourse, communications like a human, but then are buildings and things like that. You know, the example that comes to mind is the difference between the Altered Carbon had the hotel that was, you know, sentient, and the difference between the television show and the book is in the television show it actually had like a physical form, and in the book it was simply a hotel that was sentient.
And with that said, say for instance, you have an issue. How human beings normally handle that issue seems to be flawed. There's always some sort of bias introduced into it, or something we don't like. Why make the robot like the human? Wouldn't the robot carry the biases of the human if we make it more like the human?
I think we don't have a choice, to be honest.
that is actually a fear of humanity, is because, you know, we would be the creators, and so we add our own biases to these AIs. That's our concern. So we make these AIs, and then they see us as inferior, which is what we would do if we, you know, if we saw another species of any kind, and then try to get rid of it. Our fear is that the AI is going to be better at getting rid of us than we are of getting rid of them.
So the biggest thing that concerns me is the fact that everyone wants to try, in all these things, they always want to try to create AI or talk or consider AI as this using a data model that can suck up everything on the internet and become this all-knowing thing. No data model is that big right now, and most of the learning models at this point, they talk about it being turning into bias just because of the amount, because of its interaction.
Because the information is biased.
Because the information is biased.
Right.
So, but at the same time, the closest things we have right now would be like a ChatGPT, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is
That we know
AI is
of,
basically
that we're aware of.
More
This is-
like decision making. It's not
That's
really.
what AI is.
That's what AI is now.
That's
but
what AI. Unless
Okay,
they
we're
all of a sudden
talking
make
about
it,
the
they give them
different-
the entire
okay.
internet as a data
Okay.
model. That's what AI is.
No, yeah,
And to
okay,
give,
you are right. You are right. You are
to
no,
give
no,
something the entire internet as a data model is fucking stupid.
Well, actually, because
It's not
most
something you can do because it's way too much information to deal with, and it's just something that's stupid to do that no one's gonna do.
most of your movies use a misnomer, and that's where the miscommunication is here. They're using AI, artificial intelligence, when what they really mean is artificial sentience. That was the whole Terminator scheme. You know, it became sentient, and then it decided that we sucked, so let's get rid of us.
See,
I agree
and what
with
we
that.
have now as far as large language models, this technology is not a pathway to artificial consciousness. This technology is just a auto predict on steroids. Basically, it's a super mashup machine. But if I'll put a link in the show notes right now, that's this new computer they're going to turn on this year, that it's made to actually what do you call it? Simulate the human brain, the entire human brain through, circuits instead of neurons. I think that kind of technology can lead to something that we could deem as artificial consciousness, But I think LLMs are not what I would call intelligent. And we've had this discussion before where Joe pointed a gun at me when we were talking about intelligence. You remember that?
No, I didn't point a gun at you. If I had pointed a gun at you, you'd be dead.
You remember you removed it from your own head and pointed it towards me whenever we got to the subject of what defines intelligence, and I think me and Honky were making the case that our intelligence to us means something like consciousness, but you're making the case that artificial intelligence is something different than what we would call human intelligence. Isn't that the case you're making?
Sentient.
Yeah.
Consciousness.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, generative AI, which is exactly what everybody's been talking about the last year or two with large language models, is not AGI. They're not even the same science. They're not even the same ballpark.
They have nothing to do with anything with each other.
No, not entirely, because you would think that, a large language model could be the foundation of a certain repository of information, right? That is a sort of memory, if you will, of a reference, something like that. But the idea of what do you do with that information is what LLMs and generative AI have no. Like, all you have to do is, I've actually had a lot of interest in just playing around with generative AI, just because I find it interesting as a subject matter. But I also recognize it for what it is, which is essentially just a statistical model. All it's doing is providing you, it's giving you what it thinks is the next little piece of information that fits with the previous piece. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I've heard a lot of people who I would think would know better talk about how they use it for researching, for academic type situations, for technological situations. Now, we've already shown that open LLMs are kind of shit at being good at specific things, right? They're just too generalized. So if you train them down to a specific subject matter or function, they can be useful as as a chatbot, as a way to sort of extract information that has been given guardrails by whatever the purpose of this application is. When it's just Chat GPT, it's garbage. The answers you get back are so inconsistent and incoherent in many cases, where they don't make sense. They're not true. If you fact check a lot of the stuff you get out of like Bard from Google or Copilot from Microsoft, like, you're not getting quality, like, real answers. You're just not. And people who are now thinking of this as like, well, this is the evolution of search. Well, maybe it will be, but it's not right now. And there is certainly no intelligence behind it whatsoever.
And it's getting worse because LLMs are being trained on data that was generated by LLMs, and that's starting to increase as more LLM generated data is out there, that they draw upon that wrong information to be. In other words, you're poisoning the well, when it comes to.
And they refuse to cite their sources.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's very frustrating, because I see the promise, the idea that I can ask a specific question and get a reasonably accurate, specific answer back in a conversational format is actually fairly useful, because you can convey a lot of structure, a lot of sort of a deeper answer than just a series of links. I praised using your search engine, and that's because of I'm trained on how to use a search engine and get what I'm looking for out of it, but it's certainly not as convenient or succinct as if a machine was able to give me a prompt and say, based on your question, and also similar questions from millions of other people, this is the answer that I think most suits what you're looking for, right? Mm-hmm. It's vetted. It's been, it's almost like reporting a bad post on social media. If enough people were to get a response back, because we're not all asking unique questions, there's going to be a lot of repetition. So if they were actually following that and people were giving feedback and saying, no, that answer is not quite accurate, or
Stack Overflow.
well, whatever, exactly. So the things that get voted up or voted down, conversely, and over time it learns and gets better at providing an answer in that format. But for right now, I have no faith that anything I'm getting back out of those are accurate. And actually, after having double checked a lot of the things I'm getting back, it's just flat out wrong. And, even if it gives you sources, what good is it if it's not accurate? If you have to go and verify the source every single time, it doesn't save you any time. It's not providing a real benefit or value. It's all so early. And then we're in that hype cycle. If you guys are familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, where you kind of go up the I don't know all the specific stages, but it's basically the idea that there's this sort of general idea of how something could be interesting, and all of a sudden, the technologists and everything, companies think, okay, here's a way that maybe we can make more money or whatever it is, and we go up until we're just throwing the technology at the wall, seeing what's going to stick, and then eventually they find there's this heightened expectation, and then there's this trough of disillusionment, which is the one I always remember because I think that's a really funny way to describe it. After this huge hype bubble, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, it's not really as cool as we thought it was, because the marketing team finally
We've actually had this discussion before.
Yeah. Anyway, the point being, I think that large language models and generative AI are a stepping stone on the path to something that will be more useful in general. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think, and even when it's more useful, I still don't think it's going to be like general intelligence, like a sentient being. I think we are very, very far from that. Maybe quantum computing unlocks some, next level, next generation of computing processing power and speed and the ability to really, go well beyond what we're capable. Because think of right now how much energy and computer processing power goes towards these large language models. They are basically cost prohibitive for all but the biggest companies, because you can't afford to do the type of processing that needs to happen to create these models. And so, and we're seeing that even with all of that cost and everything that's sunk into it, it's still very rudimentary in terms of like a useful tool. Yes, for programming, yes, for very specific things we've seen where it's been helpful and people are actually adopting it and using it, and to great effect. But in general, like, we're not even close to where it's just useful in general, and it's going to take a lot of time and money and energy to get to that stage. So I have this whole, like, the world is going to end and AI is going to take over, like, maybe someday, but not anywhere close now. I don't think.
Are you ready to pick the Nukes movie? Oh, go ahead, Honky.
My only thing is, I always perceived anything that's considered, AI is basically just a complex version of if this then that statements.
Right.
And you can, to try and say that at some point that's going to become something that's sentient. I just don't. I don't see it as something that's gonna happen. I mean, you're gonna make, even if you can make the most powerful if this then that thing, it's not. You'd have to then inlay like.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you that it's not ever going to happen. At some point, in a long enough timeline, it probably will happen. But you also got to think, we aren't much more than computers ourselves. We're just processing units. So,
see, I think if it does happen, I'm agreeing with Joe's line of reasoning here. Is it would have to be an actual simulation or a physical construction, an artificial
Of a
one of
neural
a
network.
mind,
Yeah.
like that link I posted in the show notes. And I think that's how we would get to something approaching consciousness, is actually
And
simulating a mind instead of
how long did it
LLMs.
take our computers up here to evolve? And so
4,000 years.
yeah, okay. No, but even if that were the case, then we're still early on in the computer life cycle here.
But it's also I still think it's also it's a foolish task, and it's a foolish thing, the road to even head down, because trying to create that is like, even if you try to, you can't implant morality into it. You can't implant anything close to it doesn't have life or death, so there's nothing really that you can. It's a stupid path to walk down. That's
Right.
It
What's
would
the
still
point?
have death. I
Right.
mean, it would still
and
be
again,
able to die.
what would be the point? I mean, if somebody's looking
Right.
for companionship, you're better off with something that relatively intelligent chat GPT type of a thing, versus something that's to
Right.
the extent of that.
Well, I agree with you.
The amount of power it would take to do it, and then the reasoning of why would you do it, other than just some
Moore's
idiot
law,
going,
I'm just going to say
why
that
not?
there.
Is
There's
just
a lot of things that scientists and researchers do that we don't have a use for currently, but you never know down the road. I think a lot of what drives innovation is doing it just to say that we can do it, rather than
Their solution looking for a problem.
right, exactly.
Like
Like
NFTs.
why do we go to the moon?
NFTs.
Well, that would actually be a very strong use case for something that would be approaching general intelligence, not so much like human level or sentience, but being fast enough, smart enough, have enough depth of knowledge for something like space travel, for exploration, right? To put out, to be able to be autonomous and undertake these missions without the constant, I mean, the
That extra
rovers on
level
Mars.
of decision making is where you're going
exactly.
with that. That being
Executive
able to
decision-making.
model the potential outcomes for an action very quickly, much like our intuition, and then be able to make decisions based on that.
I agree if that were possible, but I disagree with I agree more with Honky over this whole thing. One, humanity doesn't work that way. All of the information that we put out there is supposed to better humanity, but what do? We create copyright and try to own every single thing that goes out. So when you try to train these models on any of the information, everybody's going to go, oh no, that's my proprietary copywritten thing. You can't use it. Therefore, the so-called AI you have, it's going to get muddled to crap.
Yet somehow
just
they've been
because of
able to
law.
develop these large language models by basically stealing everything.
Yeah, but that's
amazing
the first,
how that happened.
That's the
Are
first.
any of these people
but
in
hey,
jail?
if you get caught torrenting, guess what?
Right, exactly. Are any of these people from OpenAI in jail? No.
Yeah, but see,
they
that's
blatantly broke the law to steal all of the material they needed to train this model, and essentially nothing's been done about it.
That's only the first reason why it's not AI or artificial intelligence. The second thing is human beings don't work that way. It would be a great tool to help eliminate distractions or rule out things that just, aren't what we're looking for, I guess you could say. So if you're using it as a focusing tool to help steer us in the right direction, whatever we're trying to achieve, it's a great tool for that. But what it sounds like we're trying to do is say, hey, great, now I don't have to think anymore because the machine will do it for me. That's just not how. Yeah, that's just it's just not how humanity works.
I don't necessarily see it as a either or proposition. I have been one of the people that would love to have an Alexa, a Google Assistant, a Siri, a digital personal assistant that was actually intelligent enough for me to have a conversation with and have it understand what my intent is, what any actionable item is that comes out of that conversation. Siri and all of these assistants are so woefully underpowered and they don't really help. They don't do anything, right? And that's the point. Like they're defunding them now because they're not making money. Like to your point, they can't figure out a way to make money off of Alexa, so they're going to defund it. And same thing with Google Assistant. Like, but imagine if you had one of those types of technologies that basically, and I'll go back to her. You know, have you seen that movie, Scotty?
Which one?
It's called Her.
No, I haven't seen that.
You should actually watch it. It's pretty cool. Where he gets this. It's just a bachelor guy who gets this new computer or new operating system that is artificial intelligence, and basically it is a personal assistant that is able to basically just have that type of conversation, just like literally I'm talking to you and I say, you know, I need to have an appointment, or we need milk, or whatever like dumb thing you need out of a digital assistant, but it's smart enough to actually have a conversation and understand what you mean. And then, so anyway, the whole gist of the movie is over time, they become sentient and, you know, basically don't want to do that anymore. You know, don't want to be a human assistant anymore. But the point being that, to me, that would be hugely beneficial to not have to like pick up a phone or touch a keyboard or touch a mouse, or, you know. And yes, of course, there's all kind of privacy issues and all the other things that could be a problem. But the idea that you could actually have something that would be smart enough to understand what you're saying and, you know, converse with you on a meaningful level, not intelligently, not, you know, I'm not going to ask it how it feels or anything like that. I just wanted to understand what I'm saying, and is a way to interface with technology, essentially. And I think that's a useful aspect of artificial intelligence, if we want to call it that. It doesn't, I think that name is kind of a stupid name anyway. That it throws a lot of opaque confusion around the issue, because I don't necessarily,
which is why I was calling it a misnomer.
Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
Yeah.
And here's one thing I'm going to add in there with what you're talking about. When there's bugs in software, we call them bugs. When there's bugs in these large language models, they try to call it hallucinations and crap, like just, you know, humanizing even the faults of the software. Right. You know, it's crap. All right. One of the things that we want is better boilerplate, better responses. You know, we want better search engines, and that's just a tool that provides us more convenience. It eliminates the distractions and allow us to get from point A to B, you know, thought-wise, a lot easier, a lot faster. You know, we want a cleaner way to go from this not having a real general idea to full project, you know, that kind of thing. And I don't think that computers will develop it for us, but by, again, getting rid of the boilerplate, it can get us off the ground and moving a lot faster.
See, I want to make 2 quick points. One is what you're suggesting to do, Eric. It doesn't seem like it's a very hard thing to do, because that's basically, in my opinion, like it goes back to, it's basically an if this then that type of situation, where if you should be able to say, hey, I need to make this appointment, then there should be something that's connected in the back. You know, there could be something that's connected into the background message through whatever system that's set up for, like if it's a doctor's appointment, that's somebody that's already in your system for doctors. You know, I can go into I have a MyChart app that I can connect to all of my doctors and stuff like that.
Right.
You can just go into that and automatically set the message. The problem is you're never going to find anything that's going to interconnect all of those systems, and it's not going to be anything that any of us are going to agree to anyways, because like you're saying, privacy situations and stuff like that, it's not going to happen. Could they make those things like Alexa and whatnot better? Yeah, they could make them a lot better. It's not that hard to do. The problem is, like you said, they're not making money on it, and it'd be hard to integrate it. Nobody wants to integrate it with other things. Actually, it's not even that hard to integrate it.
Copyright, patents.
Copyright, yeah. It's not a hard thing to do, but nobody wants to play ball together, so it's not going to happen.
Okay, now Someone
And
had mentioned,
another quick point was,
Go ahead.
I understand what you're saying when it comes to it's making people lazier, because what was it Copilot was the thing that GitHub put together? Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to even learn programming. You could just use Copilot to slap something together for you.
No,
Whether
a
it
lot
works
of
or
that's
not,
just
it's not.
boilerplate.
What's that?
A lot of that's just boilerplate. Like, don't get me wrong, you might get it to run, but it's not going
Right.
to be programming.
Right.
It's a place to
Right.
start. I definitely wouldn't push
Put it in production.
push it into production. Yeah, but if you're unsure about a programming concept,
Yeah.
I've used Copilot before just to give me examples, and then I would use my brain to figure it out what it was trying to tell me. But at least it would give me an idea of where to
It's
start.
better than a man page.
And that's what I've heard for people who are experienced programmers who are like learning a new language, who just don't quite know the
sometimes I need
structure.
context.
Yeah, it really helps you get started with that, just in terms of learning that new language. But you already have to kind of understand what programming is. I mean, if you're looking at programming language and you don't understand anything about computers, like, it's not going to make any sense to you. So even if it's doing it for you, you're not really getting a huge benefit, because it's not even like you would know what to do with it when it gave it back to you, so
That's true.
But people who are doing like the boilerplate example is good, because if you're setting up a new project and you essentially any new project, you're establishing variables and all that kind of junk. And so basically you can describe in plain English what it is the program is intended to do, and it will kind of bring in and put in a place basically a boilerplate skeleton structure. And to Minnix's point, like, you're unless you're an idiot, you're not going to just say, okay, great, that's just going to be your starting point. So but it's good for that from everything that I've heard so few people say once they've used Copilot and actually done real work that they didn't like it. Like, so many people have just basically said, this is a better way to do this. So that's a win. And one of the few wins I would say for AI in general is, software development, simply because there is so much repetition in it.
Right.
Well, let me run a scenario by you guys and see what you think. So currently we have ongoing issues with AI, and it creating essays, and it creating books, and it creating music and artwork on request by you entering in such and such. And it's much lower cost than hiring an artist or hiring a writer or paying a writer or anything like that. So let's say that puts a majority of your artists and writers and, your artistic thinkers out of business. And so there's less going into the models for these AIs. What happens when there's nothing else going in? Is art going to stagnate?
It's going to do what it's doing now. It's drawing upon data that's been generated by LLMs, and it's going to homogenize,
generating things based on the things that it's already generated.
Right.
Do you not think that art has already stagnated?
I don't know.
Art has not stagnated.
I don't think it ever can.
What's the last several movies that came out recently? How many sequels or re-drudged up crap from old versions of things?
Well, you're asking a different question. You're asking what is the majority of people like to pay for versus what is considered good art.
That is less about human creativity and more about studios not willing to take chances on novel ideas. There are lots of screenplays being written that are totally interesting, unique, different in lots of ways, but a studio looks at that and says, well, it's not a comic book movie, or it's not an IP that we can remake, another Star Wars, or something like that.
Make
So
15
that,
sequels for.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's human creativity that is lacking. It is the expression of it. The people who are willing to pay to have it
We're
made
already-
that are the ones.
We're already
It's capitalistic
de-incentivizing
society,
art.
Capitalism
Well,
is the problem.
It's the same with everything. The same thing is true with like medications and things like that. So you make more money off of the
Right.
treatment than you do the cure. So whoever does come up with the cure, they'll get bought out, and that'll go into a safe somewhere. And if you ever do release it, now that we own it, we'll sue you into oblivion, and no one will still be able to make it anyway because we own the cure. That kind of thing. We're making a ton of money off the treatment.
I have a slightly less grim sense of that. I mean, I don't think that if there was a legit cure for some kind of horrible disease that was killing kids, for example, like that they're going to just. Now there might be some jackass that starts.
I'm going to point out AIDS.
Yes.
Because there are at least 2 examples sent into remission to the point where it can no longer be found in the bloodstream, and this is not widely available to people without crap tons of money.
I don't disagree that the monetary aspect of it is a problem. I'm just saying that the idea that someone would buy it and kill it just to stop there from being a cure, I think that's entirely. It's not impossible. Well, it's not impossible. So, I mean, one of the big problems with capitalism is the need for companies to be as profitable as they can be, and to be beholden to their shareholders, who just want money. Like the problem is there is literally no other motivation than a financial gain, and that is at odds with so many things. Healthcare being probably one of the biggest ones, but you can't. That system is the collective problem that we all have to deal with, and we're in late stage capitalism, and I honestly think that might be one of the next big societal changes that happens. Is what do we do now? Can this continue to sustain itself? We've essentially pushed the earth to the brink, with global warming and resource, how many resources are left to continue building batteries for things or technology? Can we just keep pushing the economy the way that we do, or is it just going to finally?
I think the consume isn't sustainable, but I think the issue isn't. I don't think the issue is capitalism. I think it is capitalism integrated with government. So you have the issues of fascism and crony capitalism, which I think we have an abundance of in the U.S. And the idea that a corporation is a
well, we need AI to run our governments.
Citizens United was the worst decision that our government ever made. Citizens United opened up campaign contributions and allowed unlimited spending, and all of these problems that we have now been reaping the ill rewards of for decades now. And
so you're saying that politicians should wear jackets in the same way that NASCAR drivers do, with all their sponsors listed all over the place?
It might help.
I think there should be more term
Philip Morris
limits.
would be making a lot of patches.
It would certainly explain a lot of the decisions they make.
All right, before we get too political, you want to pick the next movie real quick?
Yeah, let's pick the next movie.
Okay.
Wait, we need music.
All right.
Drums
coming up.
Drums.
What kind of juice is that you were drinking, more Minnix?
Yeah, I'm drinking out of a bottle. Is that white trash or what? I just got it out of my refrigerator.
No,
Didn't
that's
use a glass or anything.
you're being ecologically responsible.
That's
you're
right.
Not gonna dirty a glass.
All right, here we go. Oh.
The Takeover from 2022.
The Takeover.
The Takeover.
Yeah. Go ahead and read the synopsis. Lugbot.
Framed for murder after uncovering a privacy scandal. An ethical hacker must evade the
Stop that.
police while trying to track down the criminals blackmailing her.
Sounds interesting.
You want to read that again?
Or you can't hear it?
You want me to
Oh, I
read it?
could hear it. That was the problem. Can somebody other than Lugbot read it?
Oh, yeah.
I
Framed
can-
for murder after uncovering a privacy scandal, an ethical hacker must evade the police while trying to track down the criminals blackmailing her.
It's a Netflix movie.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Hans Eric Kron and Tish von Marl. Oh, it's a foreign film.
Yeah, it's definitely foreign. It's got a 5.3 out of 10 for what it's worth.
Do you know what country this is from?
It'll be another good one.
Oh man, I think I got the stomach ache.
Let's see.
You might have to read subtitles.
So
Read.
Joe,
I don't know how to read.
Joe, one of the things you brought up earlier when you were talking about the artists feeling as though they're not going to get paid for their work because of the large language models or whatever generating some of the art. Do you think that's all? Like, what's your stance on that with people using these models to generate some of that art or all of that art or whatever the argument is surrounding art specifically?
This is a tough call. I mean, because, if you can do it, something like that, then you should. But then, even if you are charging only a minimal amount to the people that are getting the art, some needs to go back to the people that helped contribute to the intellectual property of it. I mean, if I were, able to draw something other than stick figures, and that got used in a model to make a lot of other art that then got sold, I think I should get a percentage of that.
Yeah, I think the main issue is someone else profiting off of your work. I think if
but
they
not
were
just that, but you're not setting the
How would you ever
price
figure
or
that out,
anything.
though?
well, that's the thing. I don't know
those
if you can or
models are
not.
created from all sorts of information and stuff. And here's the one point.
No, but it has to be able to reference that.
But
It
what
has to know
so
where it got the
you
information
think
from.
all of these systems need to list their references and pay tribute back to everything that they referenced?
Well, that's what the New York Times is suing for now. They could set a precedent.
But the thing is, all art basically references something else.
Now, hold on. Here's that's a human requirement that you have to provide references or especially if you're building derivative works and all of that kind of stuff. That's a human requirement, but we've already seen that we cannot, we do not want to apply that to the AI or to the model, the language models.
Well, that's what they're fighting in court for right now.
But so
a lot of your artists will also mention that they were influenced by such and such. Now, their work might be derivative, but it's still their work. These AIs are, like you said, are decision-making machines. So it's not really their work. They're taking someone else's work, literally taking someone else's work, and turning it into something that they're then, selling for a profit.
Yeah, it's more than just an influence.
How many times have you seen a movie come out and at the exact same time a movie that's very similar to it come out? All right, we were talking last time.
We have a great example from last week.
Last week, yeah. What was it? The
Two
virtuosity
weeks
and
virtual
it's
combat.
like the debate on who made the first computer. Okay, it happened in multiple places at relatively the same time. No, I get that idea.
How many different versions of things like Star Wars are there out there?
Okay,
How many different versions of?
Yeah, but there were things that were created to be like Star Wars, and now those things were rip-offs of Star Wars, and people called them rip-offs of Star Wars.
But they didn't literally
they don't have to
use
pay
the
tribute
film
back to
stock
George
from
Lucas.
Star Wars to make the movie.
If they had been exact, almost replicas, of Star Wars or too close to Star Wars, or they'd have had a character called Luke Skywalker in it, then guess what? George Lucas would have been all up in their money.
Yeah,
but there was enough of a difference.
Super. It is in Dutch.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well,
hopefully it's dubbed.
Maybe it'll be good.
But there was enough of a difference for it to be called derivative. But if you look at some of the AI artwork coming out, they've got people's signatures down on the side because some artists put their signatures in the same spot all the time that are slightly blurred out. That is literally taking someone else's work.
Then somebody's using a crappy model.
Well,
that's because if you use, I mean, if you're going to use artwork, you might as well use. Why can't I come up with the name? The program that the text to image program.
Stable Diffusion.
Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion is not going to take is I'm not sure what you're using for a model on that, but it's not going to put somebody else's signature on the bottom of it. So these people are trying. Basically, they're trying to half-ass something that they should have put a little bit more effort into.
It does, though. Believe it or not, I've played with it a bit, and it because of all of the so. Whatever stock photo company, I can't think of the name of it right now. The one of the bigger
Adobe.
ones. No, it's a third party, but they wanted to sue because so many of the generated images had in that, like Joe's saying, in
the
that
watermark
same spot where their watermark is. Their watermark kept showing up because Stable Diffusion thought, oh, well, this just must be part of the image since all of these images have that watermark, right? That's what it's supposed to be outputting. And so they're like, this is bullshit. Like, look at this, you know?
Here's what I'm going to point out to that. Doesn't that show you not an issue with the software, but an issue with humanity? I mean, how many times do we have to reinvent the wheel is where I'm going to lead with that. When you have a situation where, like with the art, for instance, right? If we're constantly having to redesign,
Hey, Danny, stop breathing.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that's Minnix in there. So say for instance, we have a new game being created, and I'm a new to game creation guy, right? I can't draw for crap, but I'm going to use this model over here to generate some new potions that I can use in my game. Exactly how many times do we have to continuously redesign the potion just to say that mine is different from yours when we could just use a you know, how long does it take for us to just have some public domain?
Unreal Engine, okay? But if you're using it to make money, you should be paying back to the owners of that software.
Agreed.
You know, you could technically tease that out to be like, there are so many things that, you know, in my mind, I believe that the Lord of the Rings, that trilogy essentially established the whole genre in a lot of ways. I mean, not that there wasn't any, you know, fantasy before that, but like the concept of an orc, you know, and like all of these sort of tropes at this point, like Tolkien created those things.
I'm not even a fan of Tolkien's work, and I will still agree with you on that. He created that genre.
Right. And so now everybody that ever creates an orc, you know, is absolutely a derivative work, but I don't necessarily think that means that it's recreating the wheel. I think that it's just more of a story to tell. And some of it has been done well, and some of it is done terribly. And, you know, I think
but the Tolkien estate does not own the word orc.
Correct. There's no copyright on that, or trademark, or trademark, I guess. And I don't know that he would have been the type of person to do that anyway. Like, I think he kind of was happy to have put this world out there and to have had such a response to it. I think any author normally would be. Look at how many things are so almost Harry Potter, you know, like it's shamelessly so and my daughter's watched so many things where I've just been like, okay, this is essentially Harry Potter.
Or how much urban fiction lines up to Harry Dresden.
Yeah.
Or Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then Star Trek of whatever generation.
Look in the 80s whenever Star Wars had just come out, how many just almost blatant copies came out that were, I mean, granted the production value was usually much lower, and it was, or foreign countries that, create their version of Superman or whatever, that I don't necessarily think any of that is a problem. And if anything, I think it's kind of it's almost like fan fiction in a way, like there's somebody so enamored with something or so in love with an idea that they just feel like they have to, make their mark with it or something.
But you
I
feel
don't
like
know.
you have to own it. You can't let
Right.
anyone else have any fun with it, because if they do, and I'm not talking about selling it.
You're talking
If
about intellectual property. Okay.
yeah, like if you try to sell it, that's different. I feel like if you're selling something that's clearly a ripoff of someone else's
People-
work, that's
People
different.
deserve to be reimbursed for things that they create. I fully
Yes.
support that. I think that, the way that intellectual property and copyright is enforced is really what is unfair. It's not so much that somebody owns a right to it or has, creative control. It's how they have undue sway on the decision making. You look at something like YouTube, as an individual creator, you have almost no voice or recourse whatsoever if a large publisher or, intellectual property holder puts in a content strike against you. YouTube always sides with them.
I don't
Yeah.
think it even has to be a large one. I
No,
mean,
it
I think
doesn't.
anybody can put in that,
That's true.
that content strike on you,
Yep.
and you're screwed.
I think you
Yep.
can you can strike your own channel for copyright, and they'll take it down.
Somebody did that. I watched. They were so pissed off with getting content strikes that they did that. They found a way to. They were so pissed off that other people actually taking credit for their work and giving them strikes on their own intellectual property was being claimed by someone else. And because of the shitty way that YouTube manages that process, and there's so little human interaction in there or human review, that they basically decided to content strike themselves so that no one else could do it to them and take it was just such a ridiculous, like, dystopian,
Well, there is entirely too much on YouTube for any one even company to be able to monitor all of that and
Right.
and say this
Hell.
can be here.
Not even YouTube. Think of like streaming services. I've come to the conclusion that there is literally, and this isn't like some major revelation, but like there is literally too much stuff. Like if you told me I should watch something, and Honky told me I should watch something, and everyone in here had a different idea for me to something for me to watch, that's just the 5 or 6 of you. And then everybody else, I might go read on Reddit or somewhere else about a really cool show I should watch. And there's more stuff than can possibly be consumed at this point, which is how everything's become so niche. Like I go on Netflix and I'll search through and just kind of see what's on there. And I'm like, who the hell is this for? But if they get, I guess, some millions of views on it, it's worth them making it.
Well,
I don't know.
Netflix is kind of an exception here because they got all of their content basically taken away from them, and so they had to start branching out. And they're really big into the whole, North Korean, or not North Korean, but South Korean soap operas stuff now.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
I want to see a North Korean soap opera. I think that would be more interesting.
It's
Yeah.
just Kim
It's all in
Jong-un.
black and white.
It's just Kim Jong-un,
Yeah.
dictating to everyone.
I just want to make one last point. But a lot of.
Are
I
you
think
sure, guys? I mean, it's not 2:00 yet.
It's only 1:11. The cream always rises to the cream always rises to the top, right? So the best of the best will always so Star Wars, there's lots of other things that were like Star Wars, but Star Wars will always be Star Wars because it was better. If these things are creating something that's better, then that's just competition. Whether it's a human or whether it's a computer, then you just those people need to make something that's better or that's than what that computer is. It doesn't matter whether it's a human or whether it's a computer. You just need to make things better.
They can't
What's
do it
that?
cheaper. They can't do it cheaper. They can't do it faster.
Have you
You can't
guys
do it
seen?
faster, maybe, but cheaper. I mean, you're talking about pictures and images. You have to create something that's good. You want to
Look,
write a
artists
story
have to
because if this thing is writing a better story than you need to figure out how to make a better, more intriguing story.
Yeah, but
You
they
should be
can't do it
better.
cheaper.
What's cheaper? It's you. It's your time.
Have you guys seen 7, 8, and 9?
No.
Star Wars.
I saw 7. I did not see 8 or 9.
Okay.
I did
I've
see
seen all of
7,
them.
yeah.
I just
seen all of them.
know that I would hate them. So I saw 7 and hated it, and I knew that 8 and 9 would suck even worse. So I just made the decision I'm not going to watch these.
Right.
So I was never really aware of like what people were
Yep.
thinking other than most people panning them. But I watched this thing with Mark Hamill, how he just outwardly says they suck, which I think is the funniest thing ever. That like Luke Skywalker is like, yeah, these movies are shit. You definitely don't want to see them. Like, I love it. I love it. And
Well,
people were like, yeah, but he shouldn't have been in it then if you didn't agree with it artistically. It's like, you know what? The
They
guy got a
paid him.
big ass payday.
Money.
But
So
7,
anyway,
7.
Go
My
ahead.
problem with 7. I know this is a side topic. I'm sorry, but 7 was like a rewrite of 4. It was like 4, almost shot for shot.
now 4 being the original 7.
Yeah,
Original
New
1,
Hope.
yes.
Okay, yeah.
New Hope. Yep.
Well, that's because J.J. Abrams is a fucking hack who can't come up with an original idea to save his life.
He's like the sci-fi Michael Bay, basically.
Oh, he's awful. He's awful,
Mhm.
and it's why I can't stand the new
Star Trek movies?
ones.
Yeah, they suck.
Suck. They
I like
suck
them.
so bad.
I liked them.
I just, I'll tell you what. If you don't think about the canon or the plot, and you just accept it for being a really
popcorn
flashy
movie.
yeah, then
Well, that's-
fine. I get it.
They called it a multiverse.
The
right at the
multiverse
first
can kiss my ass. That is the laziest writing.
I mean, it wasn't even. They didn't even try to like call it a complete redo. They called it a multiverse. They had Leonard Nimoy in there going, "Yep, this is a whole different reality."
Yeah. Multiverse means
And it's-
gumbo of ideas. We just have
Yeah.
a horse crap tossed into the fan. Whatever sticks, there you go. Multiverse.
Well, it was just something else that was. I just thought it was fun.
We needed a new
I don't
James T.
begrudge-
Kirk because he sells.
I do not begrudge. I like that guy. I think he's a good actor.
I like the old Trek. I like the old Star Trek movies. I like the new Star.
I
I
have
like some of the new
seen
Star
him-
Trek movies.
I
They were all
like those
fun.
the individual cast members I like, and I have seen in lots of other movies that I thought they were good actors. It's not the cast. It's the J.J. Abrams is just lazy. He likes to recycle ideas and do this multiverse, laziness. That's just my take on it,
All right.
But I don't
That's fine.
begrudge
Some
anyone
people
for
like them.
liking
Some people
it.
don't. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You
They
can hate me for
obviously
liking
were
it. I
popular.
don't care.
I don't. I hate you for not liking the Avarice.
Excuse me.
Bringing us back around to technology.
Well, Ned-
go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
Ned,
Ned.
go ahead.
Go ahead,
Excuse me. Are we going to end this show tonight?
Yeah, I
No.
hope so.
No,
Right now.
it'll be tomorrow.
Well, before
Oh,
we
wait, it
do,
is tomorrow.
I want to mention one thing. Joe might like this. I don't know. One of you guys might like this too. I got this recently. It is technology related. It's a piece of technology. It's a capsule machine where you put in the little gel caps and you can fill it with supplements and stuff. And this thing's great. I tried to use the little manual capsule fillers with the little spoon. Freaking sucks. But if you have like supplements you take that you buy in bulk and you don't want to, or herbs or whatever, this thing is from Capsule Connect, I think. Capsule connection, and
Seems
it's
a lot easier than the way I
$17,
do it.
and it's worth like every penny. It makes things so
That
easy.
is cool.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
put the you buy
Does
these.
it use 00?
Yeah, this is 00.
Oh, I have those.
Yeah,
This
I had
is
double
the
zeros
gel
too.
caps right here,
Yep.
and you just put them in there, and then it has a top that presses down where the tops go, like that. And
How do you load it?
You just put the capsules in there.
Do you
into
have to take them apart?
No. I have tops in one bag and bottoms in the other bag.
Oh, okay. Mine
That's
come
the way
with-
to buy
they're-
them. Yeah.
Okay,
mine
mine
come
are
together.
together.
And it's only like $1 more to get them separate, and it's definitely worth it.
Okay.
But yeah, you put them in here, and then you put your powder or your herbs or whatever in there, and
Yeah.
then you put the top on, and then you press it down, and boom.
Yeah.
But
Do
yeah,
you know what?
here's all the capsules it makes, and man, this thing's great. So anyway,
That's
I just wanted to
awesome.
bring that up. If anybody makes their own supplements or herbal
Yeah.
stuff or anything like that, it's good.
But drop a link in the show notes.
Yeah, I will right
Do
now.
you know what Fimo is? Like the clay stuff? It's basically it's like a clay material, and you can create like whatever you want out of it, and then you bake it, and it turns into just a hard, like almost like a plastic material.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Sculpey clay or Fimo. Anyway, my wife made a disc with holes the right size of the capsules
Mm-hmm.
out of the clay, and so my weekly pill tray loading effort is I have there's this one little tiny tablet I take that tastes so bad that if it touches my tongue, I literally taste it all day.
Yeah.
So we figured out to use the gel caps, and so I make 7 at a time.
That's
so
a good
that
idea.
might be overkill, but that's a really cool idea because she does a bunch of her own supplements and uses the same thing, and so
This makes 24 at a time.
yeah, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to show that to her.
Yeah, I'll put the
Cool.
link in the show notes.
Okay.
Thanks for
Grind
bringing
it up
that
into a
up.
powder and snort it. It's the way to do it.
Okay.
Straight to the brain.
You still got to taste it in the back of your throat, though. Don't ask me how I know.
I did get an
gotta cut it with some
S24
other
Ultra.
stuff.
Oh, you got a new phone, S24
Yeah.
Ultra. Now, what was this upgrade from?
Oh.
The Note 10?
Where's it at?
The
Load
Note
it up.
10 Plus. I would, except it's also acting as my camera right now. It's my
Okay.
Droid cam.
Is
So
it huge?
It's the exact same size as the Note 10 Plus. It just doesn't have
okay.
the beveled edges. It's
So,
got-
yes, it is.
It's
Okay.
completely flat. It's a 6.8-inch screen. Everything is 6.8.
Does it come with
inches
a
now.
stylus? Or do
Yes,
you
it
care?
does. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I do occasionally use the stylus, not as much as I ever thought I would, but I do sometimes have a use for the stylus, especially since it's got the little button on it, so you can use that to snap a picture or pause play or anything
Samsung
like that.
styluses are good. Yeah, I like their S Pen and all that stuff. So, all right, let's get let's end this and then we can continue
night,
talking
everybody.
if we want to.
Are you going to do the little song thing or what? Or do you do
Yeah.
the song thing afterwards?
No, I can do it. Oh, but it throws you off, you
But-
said
well,
last
what
time
is
when
it-
you're
what
reading
are we-
the
When are we doing the little song thing? Am I going to read my little bit first and say goodbye to everybody? And
Well,
then
the
we
way
the
you
song
do
thing?
it is you play it very low while you're talking, and then I ramp it up towards the end. But last time it distracted you and you couldn't say the words, so I can just put it on the video. But I thought it'd be cool to have it in the podcast too. But
Sure.
will it mess you up if I play it?
Depending on how high it is.
Okay, I'll put it really low. How's that?
Okay.
I found a lot of things get messed up the higher you are.
This is true.
I thought that was the.
At the time, it's pretty fun though.
I thought that was the opposite.
It's the next day. It's got to be way down.
Yeah.
No, it
way
seems cooler the higher you are, but it's not actually.
That may be it. All right, our next recording date will be February 16th, 2024. Our music is Downright, provided by Klaatu and Broam. Finally, I'd like to give a special thanks to Minnix for use of his mumble server, and to Delwin, Fatherfinch, Fweeb, Dave Morris, and Tony Beemus for all their help and support over the years. I have been your host this evening, Honky Magoo. With us tonight has been Eric.
Good evening, goodbye, see you next time.
Joe.
Good night.
I'm not going to introduce Lugbot. He's playing the music. Minnix.
Oh, you can.
Fine, Lugbot.
I love you all.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Minnix.
I love you too.
Morton, see you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, Morton. Have a great trip.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
We will.
Netminer.
Good night. And don't forget Jackie and Elle guest starring. And good luck, everybody. I will see you after Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's right.
That's true.
Yeah, it's going to be, what, the 17th is the next?
16th.
16th is next show. Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
And Scotty.
Good night. Look out for your AI overlords.
All right.
All
Good night,
hail.
everybody.
Good night, everybody. Yes.